Here we go. Okay, thank you. Okay, so this is our first meeting where we're getting into more of the meat and potatoes. So today we're going to talk about everything operations. And just for a reminder, an estimate of a 1% tax increase is just over $45,000. It's $45,365. So that's about a 1% tax increase. So you can put it in perspective. So I know there's stuff on here, but I'm going to go into my spreadsheet for starters because we're starting with operational stuff. And I like to put my notes here, which is the same thing that's on your screen. So we'll just get started. So grant and aid other. So this is in addition to the $40,000 we give to the Shuswap Community Foundation for grants. This is so we have the discretion here. 5,000 of that is committed to Eagle Valley Arts Council for 2 more years. And then there's $5,000 miscellaneous. So if you look at what we've spent over the last 4 years in this account, this year we've spent about 7,900. Last year we spent more due to COVID. And then it was around 9,000 in 2019. And in 2018, there was a larger amount because we put $25,000 for the Legion, paving the Legion parking lot. So I've got it at 10,000. It's a decrease from 20,000 last year because we bumped it up a little bit more because COVID was still going on. Not that it's not still, but we haven't given out more. So I'm happy to modify that number. This is your donation bucket.
Comments? All good.
Okay. Next is travel and conference for council. And this, I have the 5-year comparative on that. So is this it? Yeah. So clearly we've barely spent anything the last 2 years because of COVID. I've kept the budget at 25,000, the same as last year. Maybe partway through the year, there might be more. I'm happy to modify that to anything you guys feel is appropriate.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair, did we not use those funds for some donations and emergency uses? Just chose to leave it there. The travel, we could use the money.
Yeah, I increased like grants. So these were higher in previous years. These were lower. And then specifically in 2020, we had an additional 40,000 that I reallocated somewhere else.
Okay, thank you.
Gord?
Yeah, through the chair, do we, are we going, is there FCM this year? Or is that going to be on the, is that going to be virtual, you think?
No.
You know what month that normally is?
Yeah, it's June. As of now, it's in person, but I wouldn't bet on that. But as of now, they're planning it to be in person. I believe it's Regina.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
Geez, we could drive there.
So
I see that changing to virtual.
what do you guys think? Should we leave it where it is, put it up a bit? It's going to go, eventually this is going to pass, right? So then we're going to have to take it up at some point. So
that's why I've left it at 25 because it's still, I think, higher than what we'll end up by spending. But then for next year.
but if we don't spend it, we can use it on other things, though, correct?
Well, it does affect taxation. So so operational things, if we put it in the budget, it has a direct impact on taxes. And yes, some things are up, some things are down.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Thank you. So we give some money to the chamber on behalf of the district to distribute through the businesses for COVID. I think it was 20.
It's either 20 or that was in 2020.
Oh, okay. And so in 2021, I'm sorry, just for the breakdown. So they've got all their hand sanitizers and all their plexiglass. And so that need is zero now?
Correct. We haven't spent anything in 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll leave it where it is. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, if we see what the bottom line ends up at, we could adjust.
Yeah, but
Right. And
we'll have that opportunity to bounce back and forth.
so that's a great point. Councillor Malmas, after we go through all this in February, summarize what the tax impact and I have been doing it with our new software and I've got it together and we're looking okay for taxes. So I'm feeling pretty good with where the numbers are at right now.
Thank you.
So then we move to staff travel and conference, and then this also is a 4-year breakdown. And clearly the last 2 years have been a lot less, but as things become more in person, this probably will grow. So last 2021, we had 15,000 there. And what do I have again? I have staff training, 15. So I did the same as was done for the council. I just left it the same as last year, even though we didn't spend that amount, just knowing that there'd be buffer.
Okay,
Okay.
comments? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks to the chair. Kelly, just something that's come up, when it comes to supporting EVT, whereabouts in our budget, because there's been a request in order to add another piece of infrastructure to the EVT plan. Where would that be when it comes to our budgetary talks?
Donations.
Maybe,
Go ahead, Malcolm.
maybe I could help out there. It's awkward because I'm wearing some hats. So I'm just gonna speak freely and a lot of hats. So with Eagle Valley Transportation, the president, by transportation to folks, right now we have a disability van for wheelchairs, electric car. Thinking about venturing into more local transportation for people who are transitioning and need local mobility, AKA electric scooters. So as a counselor, I have a fund here for $5,000. Age-friendly cost $5,000. I've been very frugal with that. I haven't spent any of that in the last 2 fiscal years. I just put a request in this morning to Carrie, our mayor, and again, it's awkward because there's so many hats. So I sort of use this fund and it's supposed to be discretionary, but I just want to be transparent and bring it to council. There's a fellow that lives at the Haven, Tom Ty, and about 6 weeks ago had a stroke. Now, Tom is not very well liked in the community, but the community member, he's lived here all his life. So with the stroke, he's had mobility issues and he uses a walker to get down to the pharmacy, or EBT's been picking him up and taking him just to the local doctor at Finlayson there. If he had a scooter, he could be more independent and better quality of life. So I put a request in as president of EBT to access the age-friendly funds, which I kind of monitor as counselor, and again, sorry for all the conflict. And the EBT would, the intent there at EBT would, I've researched some scooters. There's one that's 8 months old. It's got the canopy for the window. It's 4 wheels and a double seater and everything. 5,500 new, and it's 8 months old. And I've got this fellow talked down to 3,250. So I've asked Terry for 3,250 as president of the EBT to release those funds from the age-friendly grant, or age-friendly fund, if you will, to purchase that used. And then EBT would just loan it to Tom until he either recovers or no longer needs it. And then that would become an asset of EBT to gain loan out to anybody in the community that finds a new need for additional mobility. So that's what Terry was trying to say. I guess to try and keep it as clean as possible, he is requesting 3,250 out of that account to purchase the used scooter to loan to for now, Tom Ty, until he no longer needs it. And then it would become an asset of, well, it would be an asset of EBT to the community that need that.
Go ahead, Gordon.
Yeah, through the chair, I mean, I do think it's a great idea for your organization to have a loaner for that, or, you know, that something comes up. Does the Manor or the Haven or places over there have their own I was just curious.
They have walkers, you know, and they're available anytime, and wheelchairs, not electric wheelchairs, but wheelchairs and walkers, but they don't progress scooters. I'm not sure what organization in town, I think it's the Sycamoose Legion, the Women's Auxiliary, I think it still exists. And I was talking to Stevie, I think it was, or no, Georgie, and they recently bought a scooter for a local senior in town there, an upgrade. So that was a one-off. They had a little bit of surplus funds. So the Manor does not do that. Eagle Valley Senior Housing Society, I'm on the board, there's another hat, but they don't do that. They don't provide, they provide on a temporary basis wheelchairs and walkers, but not.
They have the garage over there, that mini cart garage at
They
the
do.
Manor.
Yeah.
It's just kind of neat. It's a little garage for mini carts, and I just thought they'd have a couple rentals in there or loaners, but
Go ahead, Jeff. Sorry, Gordon.
Sorry, yeah. It's in the budget and it's your discretion. And good idea. Let's move on.
Thanks, Jeff. I'm just going to make a comment on it. I think that you might be setting a precedent because and I'm just saying, be cautious. You're right. It is your budget. But if he perhaps needs that scooter for the rest of his time, then the next person, you may be looking at scooters. So I'm just saying, you're setting a precedent, and I don't know if that's the direction you wanted to go with that. So slippery slope.
Early days.
Yeah,
And there's
I know.
liability issues with loaning, so I'm thinking maybe gift it to him, and then with the condition he gives it back when he's done, so we don't accept any, you know, he takes it as is, and then there's no liability issues with accidents or.
Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, no, it's, I see where we're at with this. I just was wondering what avenue we were going to take. I'm in favor of seeing this happen, and I see it's in the budget, so I think it's pretty much to come.
And this is a 2021 budget item, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, so to me, it sounds more like a grant to an organization than an actual age-friendly cost. You know, so we can, either way, there's room in either budget. So as long as council approves, I'm fine with that, as long as council approves it.
Okay, Jeff.
Through the chair, you know, when you go to some communities and you see those scooters sitting on the side of the road, and I don't know, they're left in the most awkward places. I don't even know how they access them. All right. But it must be through some sort of a card system. I'm not sure if that's something, if the district wanted to get specifically to the senior center, have a couple that were like there for anybody to use, not specifically for one person to use. And they have a card that they can access it. You know, they need the card, they stick it in and it goes, takes them where they want.
Yeah. EBT uses the KISS system. We keep it simple. We don't have an office. We don't have a website, or we don't have any overhead. And that's a system. Every system needs administrative maintenance. So we try low overhead. So early days, but you know.
Yeah, and it's 2021. Everybody's okay with that? Okay.
Okay, I will process accordingly. Okay, so moving on, there's three new items all relating to the election. So one, I've got $5,000 in 2022 and in 2023. So straddling both years because the election's in the fall of 2022 for council training, whatever that will look like. And then I've got also a number of 10,000 for some new iPads, tablets, depending what that will look like. And then I also have an estimate for election costs of $16,000, which was based on the cost of the 2018 election. And we anticipate a very similar cost there. And we're using those tabular electronic voting system.
It's costing a lot to get rid of us, isn't it?
I don't think you should have the council training line in there because it's just a waste of money. Honestly, you have somebody come in here and tell you can't do this, you can't do that you should just listen to staff. And so I don't think that should be part of the education process.
It's part of the
Noted.
process. It's not up to us. It's part of the process. So staff needs smarter counsel.
So is everybody okay with those costs?
We're good.
Other than Council Molmus will make a note that he disapproves the training piece.
You know what we could do is maybe get Counselor Momus to do the training.
Why not?
Not a good idea, I don't.
Me and George Cup.
Good, George.
Why don't we have an election to remove staff and keep council?
Good idea.
Every 8 years we roll over, we. Hey, sorry, roll digress.
No, all done. It's easy to do. Okay, so legal fees, this is just really for information, so you can see what we spend. And this is for administration, building, bylaw, HR, planning. The majority of our legal fees, we separate them between departments. So as you can see, the last 2 years, we've had a lot larger, and this is year to date, legal fees. Both years, they related to various HR issues. There was larger lump sums, maybe for approximately 30,000 each year for different things occurring there with the union and other stuff. And then in addition, this year, we've had a lot more legal reviews on various planning documents and agreements and sorting some old messy agreements out. For example, the whole Sable, all those dollar values. We've cleaned up a few messy agreements from years past, which we've needed additional legal advice on, but we anticipate the budget to be around 50,000 next year. So we're keeping it similar between the various departments. And even though our actuals were higher the last few years, we're hoping that we can keep it lower next year.
Any comments? Jeff?
I can't read how much the big number was year to date.
Yeah, okay, sorry about that. I can help you with that. I can zoom it in. For your,
You can just tell me what it is.
I know, I bet, 87.
I thought it was 187. I was gonna have it.
No, so 87 this year and 75, you know, with one issue or one really pesky agreement where you need a lot of good legal advice and it's really important. So it is money well spent.
Thank you.
Hey,
I'll just,
go ahead, Evan.
there's a lot of legal spent on this rail to trail issue,
Yeah,
just so you know. Yeah, we've had legal on HR issues, but there's a lot of legal on our 2T rail to trail. Lots. So I think you're aware of that, but it's probably bigger than you think.
that's up quickly.
Excuse me. Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair, could I actually get what that number is
Mhm.
on the rail trail legal costs?
Yep, I can break out all the legal costs.
I'm only interested in that one. The rest I don't care about. I'll bring that up at the next meeting.
Hey,
Okay,
that's perfect.
Staff are here to serve you, Councillor Momus.
Thank you. That's an honest change. Thanks.
Okay, so this is a strategic priority, number 3. This is the last of our doctor incentives. So based on the agreements we have in place, next year, we will be spending 10,000 as an incentive for each doctor. And after that, there's no more incentives. It's being funded from our operating reserve, which is for one-off expenditures. So that's in the budget. And this is just more for information.
Comments? Okay,
And then moving on, we have what Councillor McCabe was talking about. So we have age-friendly costs, 5,000 in the budget. That's what we've had the budget, I think, for the last 5 or 6 years. The last 2 years, nothing has been spent. So everybody's fine with leaving that amount in there.
yep.
And then Communities in Bloom, once again, we've had $10,000 in there for quite some time. This year, we've spent about 7,000 year to date, and Deb does a good job of making sure she tries to spend that money to make the community beautiful. So we're good with that.
Oh, hang on. Go ahead, Terry.
I have a question on this Communities in Bloom and some of the requests around it, Communities in Bloom, but maybe it's an infrastructure question. I don't know where we're at with this, Daryl, but there's been strong push in order to put lighting on all the trees along Main Street, and it's been a Communities in Bloom initiative. Have you been in conversation with Deb in regard to that? And I don't know whether this would be a budgetary concern or if there's money in some other areas of the budget in order to accomplish that feat.
Through the chair, we are doing the lights in the trees for Christmas. Anything longer term, just speaking with our arborists, it's not a good idea to leave them in there for extended seasons or for years on end. So we get it through the Christmas season, but a permanent lights in the trees, we haven't planned for that.
So as a matter of fact, I think on Main Street Landing, we have some trees or lights in the trees and they have grown right into the trees. So for the Public Works to get rid of those, it's probably going to damage the tree pretty good. So it's tough because they grow. Yeah, I tried that last year after Christmas to keep all the lights in and they dissed me.
I'm good.
Good?
Yep.
Okay, are we good with 10? Leave it there? Okay,
Yep, Deb's pretty thrifty and she knows how to make that money work for her. Okay, so that's it for administrative and legislative goodies. Now we're moving on to the fire department. So this first number just shows 341,000 is what I have in the budget currently for all the wages and expenses to operate the fire department, excluding transfer to reserves and excluding any grants that we get. So that's just more for information. And I do have the fire department 5-year summary of what it costs to operate. So as you can tell, the 2021, we spent more. That's because fire and the structure protection that we were required to do within our district boundaries, which we don't get any money back for. However, Brett sent the guys out to help out with all the other fires this year, and he managed to make over $249,000 from the province on our equipment and on the additional premium on the labor and everything. So that goes into the fire equipment reserve, this additional amount. So this, we can see last year there was nothing. In 2019, he earned another 4,000, and in 2018, 64,000.
Wow.
Right, so when there's a bad fire year, the fire department is able to generate that additional revenue, which I put into the fire department reserve. So we budget around 340 each year, 309, 339, 339. So I've got with all the different items that make it up, I'm at 341. So that's kind of
been good with that?
We're good.
Yep.
And then we have 2 grants that we're in the middle of spending. This is just also more for information. We have a 2020 grant, which was for 150,000. We still have 80 remaining to spend. And then we have another grant, which was for 116, which was related to economic recovery funds for wildfire. And we have about 100 left to spend on that. That number may change by year end, but for now, that's where they're at. And then something that's a little bit more modified is a fire hall feasibility study. So Brett has issued an RFP and for this, because we put it in the budget in 2021 for 10,000. But what he's finding out is that it's probably going to be more than 10,000. So he wanted that increase to 30,000.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Thanks. So we did a study that identified the need for potential fire hall. Now this is analyzing what that cost is and where it would be.
Yeah.
Okay.
And like a design, like whether we keep it where it is, whether we do a new build, just kind of looking at options.
Drilling deeper,
Yeah.
getting ready in case funding comes up. I like that.
Right, we're getting ready for as fire becomes more of an issue, there's more grant money like allowed to be spent on fire type items. So if we get our ducks in a row, then maybe we can jump on something. Even the gas tax that we get now, an eligible expenditure, which never was before, is for fire equipment.
Any other comments? No, we're good.
So just put that up. Okay, so now we're moving on to recreation, events, and economic development. So special events costs, I've got a 4-year summary. I haven't changed the number from last year because we haven't, similar to travel and conference. Oops, what are we? That's Rex. Events, okay, here. So I budgeted 88,000 in 2021. We've spent 21,000 to date. On 2020, we spent 73,000. I mean, obviously, in years back, we spent a lot more. We don't know what this next year is going to look like, so I just kept the budget the same as last year, giving us some buffer room. And then as we talk about that, we can talk about the Monashee Music Festival. So I've also got that as a separate line item here. Hold on, sorry. Right underneath it, so that's new. So they're requesting $12,000 of money, financial support, as well as other items like fencing, the stage rental fee waived, the washroom fee waived. It all works out to about $18,000 of actual other types of costs and public works time. So options and discussion on that, whether we want an additional 12,000, whether we want to include that in 88, whether we don't want to support it at all. Floor is open.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So I think you should leave it at the 88, and I think you should support the music festival, but he's asking for a lot of stuff, and I actually think that he should have a contract that profitable at all. Any cash he makes, he pays back to get down to. We never gave away more than $10,000 like to the Stomp or any of those other places. And so now we got a guy down here with 20,000 asked on 10. And so, I mean, we haven't had any event. Excuse me, we basically, if we're allowed to have an event, we're not gonna have to organize and put the time and effort into it that needs to get it off the ground. So that's worth something. But I also think that if his receipts come in, it's a good deal, then he shouldn't make a bunch of profit. He's going, usually the first year is not a moneymaker. So, you know, he has to prove that the first year is not a moneymaker, and then we go, okay. But if he makes a profit, that's not going in his pocket at the taxpayer's expense. That's just my personal opinion.
I think it's all going to depend on who's headlining it. Daryl, do you have any thoughts on this? I see the wheels turning.
To the chair, I'm not sure who's headlining it or even what kind of music they play at the Monashee Festival.
Country and Western.
Oh, two kinds. My favorite.
Sarcasm?
I guess from my perspective, they're talking about numbers of 3,500. I don't know where that number comes from. I don't know if that's just what he sees when he puts that festival on. He gets 3,500 people. Logistically, he's got a long list of work that has to be done. He's talking about moving the big tents, doing all the fencing, supplying a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not so worried about supplying things that we own. We've got them. I mean, we have to clean them up, get them ready and move them, and it's time. But you get that number of people depending on the dog park. I just did a quick measurement. We've got about 5,000 square meters on the side where the Stomp people would park. And so you're not bringing in bikes, you're bringing in vehicles. The profile isn't very big. I figured you could probably get 200 vehicles in that parking lot. That's not even close. They would have to be busing people in because I'm not sure where all the vehicles would park. And then once they do get to the park, 3,500 people, I think that far exceeds what we ever saw at the Stomp for any given day. I'm a little concerned about opening the gates, doing all this work, bringing them in, and then where do they go? Where do they park when they get to town? How does the busing work? Logistically, I just think it's really challenging. And yeah, they're asking for an awful lot of hours, just looking at what they want. And so, I mean, we can do anything, but
Thanks, Daryl. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, thanks. So this came to council and council referred it to the finance committee. And so the finance committee's got to refer it back to council. We can't make decisions as a committee, right? On this anyhow. This committee has to refer it back to council with recommendations. So I suggest that we ask Daryl to go through that list, say yes or no to each item line by line by line. And on what staff can handle. And I'm thinking what sort of Daryl's thinking, we can give them this stuff, but they should get their own volunteers to set up, tear down, move around, that kind of stuff as much as possible. We want to take some ownership in the portable stage, probably have to set that up ourselves or because we want to look after. But anyhow, it's sort of for rambling. We have to come up with a recommendation on this request letter to send back to council for a decision. So I'm suggesting that we ask Daryl, could just quickly go through it line by line right now and say, yes, no, supply, but not install, that kind of thing. And then we can have a recommendation and send back to council. Or is that?
Yeah, no, I agree with Malcolm. I mean, devil's in the details with all of this stuff as Gerald's trying to figure it out. But I mean, we got $12,000 in the budget for this. I agree. I think we haven't had any events for some time now, and I think it's necessary that we do have. So I'd like to see us, take a hard look at this because I think the community could, would be really receptive to this particular festival. But so I think if it's going to come back to council, then we should get some sort of report so we can make a decision.
Evan and Gord.
Yeah, I think this event could be huge. I believe one night's dedicated to country and another night's dedicated to rock. So they're going to hit both genres. I don't think the issue is the 12,000, or I don't think the issue is the tent, the washrooms. We can play. But to the operation manager's comment, he's bang on. The concern I have and the concern the RCMP has, I've met with Murray, is where do you put 3,500 people? That's the issue for us staff. He's being told that they're going to come here to camp. Well, you all know how many bikes and tents that the Stomp had along the Eagle River on the dog park. 100, maybe 200, 3,500. There has to be a designated camping spot that they're going to have to bus in. It's going to have to be out in a rural area somewhere. There is no camping facilities in Sycamore, as you know. That's our concern. We can only put so many people to camp and spend 2 days in the dog park. 1,000's probably the top end. If you look back at the Stomp over the years. So the challenge for staff is to find a designated offsite location where people can camp, whether it's Malaqua or Swansea Point or somewhere, and they can bus in, or Salmon Arm, and they just bus in. But even that, putting 3,500 people in the dog park, being that COVID has shut down all events for 2 years, this could be a huge event. People are just waiting to go out and have fun. I do believe this group has the capacity to pull this off, but I couldn't agree more with Daryl. The challenge is the numbers. It's not the amount. It's not the infrastructure. The public works guys will have that stuff set up quick. It's a big number, folks. It could be amazing for our community, and I love the program. It's just, where do you put 3,500 people? And if they're going to camp, where do they camp? Anyways, we're going to try to figure it out.
Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, through the chair, it'd be nice to have a country and rock festival. The beach park is pretty small for that amount of people. If VVI ever gets the bridge done, we might be able to have it on the other side. But I think it'd be good for the community again, and now that we're able to get back together and have events, in different numbers. But it's just logistics and Daryl's team, how we can put it together.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
So I suggest that the committee approve the cost and approve whatever staff is willing to accept as in-kind work, I think we can provide all the materials, the assets, if you will, but staff can be more specific in what they're willing to do as far as in-kind labor, you know, for set up, set down and all that stuff. And I think what Evan was talking about logistics and Daryl too, about can a whole 3,500. Well, they're asking for a waive in the permit fee, so you can have to issue a permit, right? For the event. And that permit will list the cap of
Facility use permit.
that'll all be the details that we'll just leave to staff to work out. And that permit would probably dictate a maximum count as far as our fire chief says, or, you know, recommends to staff to put into the permit. So those are details that will be identified in the permit that's issued. But I think the overall intent is this committee supports this event. And we'll leave it to staff on how much in-kind work and assets are used. And the committee that supports in-kind the $12,000. And we'll keep that as a recommendation and bring back to council.
Thanks, Malcolm. Go ahead, Jeff.
I still think that, like I said, it's an event and, you know, we were pretty adamant about other events that we sponsored a maximum of $10,000 in some in-kind work. And I believe that out, but I still maintain that if he gets 3,500 people in this thing, he should have some money in the kitty and he should reimburse above what we say is going to be in kind. And I'm more in line with $10,000 than $12,000 if he agrees to do the other part. And then we can decide that we want to, because we're going to be on the hook for, it appears, about 18,000. I don't know if that's direct cost or labor from.
That's a loss of revenue and an estimate for labor.
Okay, so I don't think that it's an event that everybody's going to attend. He's charging admission and the district is paying for it. I mean, I did things for the Legion. I put up the money to the band in, and when the band came in and when they paid at the door to get in there, if they got enough money back, they paid me back. So I'm not on that. A great event might be a flop, but at the same time, I think that yes, if we're allowed to have an event, we should have it. But I think that this group should be held accountable financially for some of this stuff. If he attains those numbers, there's no way that he's not walking out the door with some money. If he only gets 35 people to it, well, then, you know, the district.
So it sounds like we need some more information. Maybe Daryl can get us some numbers. Maybe we can talk to Monashi Music Festival and pitch. Brian, do you have a?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm in favor of this in concept, but it would be good to see a list of the contributions that the Monashi Music Festival is looking to put in here, because they should have a plan for transit to get that many people to the festival, and parking plan and security. Yeah, so there's a lot of things that aren't on that list that I don't want to just assume that they're providing before I show support for this. I'd like to see them come at us with a plan of how they're actually going to do it. But I'd be happy to tell them that, you know, in concept, yeah, we like the idea.
Need more deets. Go ahead, EP.
So looking at a glass half full, there is an option where we've done tremendous work on trying to build a campground on Eagle. We know that the owner, both owners, both Labouré and Haberman, support the concept of camping. And we know that it's being held up by the ALC. If we were to get a permit from the ALC, similar to what Salmon Arm does for the Roots and Blues, where we could get a permit to maybe allow dry camping, that's something we could talk to the owners. Maybe there's an option there where they could dry camp and be shuttled from that area to this facility. Just a suggestion. These are things we would look at. I know both landowners, and one of them in the crowd today, have been supporting this concept now for 6 years as we try to get that thing approved. The only issue is the access, of course. But if we were to get permission from the ALC, because they do allow temporary permits for parking for festivals, no different than Salmon Arm.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, there's an option. I think there's other options as well. Sorry, Brian, do you want to just comment?
And if you want to use our place, I'm up for it. I wouldn't ask you Just do it.
Farmer that put together Woodstock in 1969 had the same attitude. He's the guy that saved that concert. Not suggesting we're going to bring Woodstock to Sycamoose, but that's exactly what the farmer said. Just do it.
So at the end of the day, I think we just need a little bit more information before we decide on that.
Thank you, Brian.
So for now, I've got, we want to ask them for a budget summary of the event. They must have a budget of how much it's going to cost and
All their details.
who's whatever.
Yeah.
And then
Transportation.
subsequent to the event, we can, if we do give them money, we can request to see their actuals afterwards. So we can, that could be a stipulation of it. So for now, do we want to put any dollar value in there? Do you guys support it enough high level at this point to throw 10,000, 12,000, 5,000 towards it? Do you want that to be part of the 88? So then it really doesn't affect the budget, but it comes out of that 88 event? How does everybody feel?
Malcolm, Terry, and Jeff.
I think like Councillor Mamas, keep that separate so we can track it and it
Okay.
doesn't get blurred in the picture. But a difference between 10 or 12, if we say yes to 12, then we're showing this organization that we welcome them to our town. So for the minor difference, I say support the 12 and then whatever operations is willing to do with the rest of the request.
Terry?
Yeah, I'm good with what's suggested in the budget by Kelly, the $12,000. Move on.
Jeff?
Yeah, I'm fine with the 12 as well, but I think that it should be linked to the 88 upstairs. Like, we keep it as a separate item, but he's coming, it's got to be linked to that 88 up top.
Sure.
Where are we using the 88 at?
Right, so what I
Have another event.
Yeah, the total event. So the 88 would just be reduced by 12. I will definitely track anything related to the Mahashi Music Festival separately. But the total overall event budget, I can leave at 88, so it doesn't have a financial impact.
Go ahead.
One last comment. I have, when we're doing budget deliberation, we're doing it for what's going to benefit the community. And if we bring 3,000 people, 1,000, it fills up all of the hotels and there's a spin-off and I think that that's what we really have to consider when we take on something like this. And I know it's challenging, but I think it's going to be good for the community in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I think we all agree on that. It's just logistics, figuring it all out. And, Evan, as you said, even talking to some of the motels and hotels that do have space, perhaps they could allow outdoor camping outside in
Parkage.
their some of their space. But anyway, Kelly, you know what?
Yeah, and I'm just asking this question to Scott. I'm not sure if he knows. Are we allowed to hold events over there? I know we previously got permission for the stomp, but there were certain rules that we had to follow.
ALC.
To the
The ALC for,
chair at the dog park.
yes.
So I believe it's till 2022. There's an agreement on, I think it's 10 events a year. And then that can probably be extended.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
I knew there was something there. Thanks. Okay, so we'll go into recreational programming. So this, let's see here, where are we? So, and just back up on events, the last, 2 years, we haven't spent all that much in events. Talked about that. Okay, so recreational programming. We've been spending the last few years around 85 to 80,000 on recreation, consistent with the budget. In 2019, we spent a little bit more. And I have the 2022 budget at around 80,000 as well. So that's the net. So there's revenues, less expenses. So the more programming we do, the more revenue we generate. So that's the net cost of recreation to the district of Sycamoose. Is everybody good with that?
Okay, we're good, Kelly.
Okay, and then we'll talk about economic development. Okay, so total economic development and tourism budget. So this is the total cost in the budget. So in 2020, we budgeted 526. So that's quite a large number, but 300 of that is for a grant that we were going to give to the DOSDC for a campground venture, which didn't ever materialize. 2021, which is this current year, we budgeted 220. So 66 for visitor information, the 33,005 to support the tourism, the MRDT, which we have a commitment till 2024 to support that. Our ECDEV fee for service of 100K. And then we also have, we reduced it in 2021, 20,500 for, we do have a couple billboards we pay monthly for the district of Sycamoose, as well as for any promotional items that we do, some videos or some photos, some t-shirts and all those type of things come out of here. So what's recommended for 2022 is a decrease to the amount supported to the visitor information for visitor information services, which we'll talk about that shortly. So, and that's this is coming from the chamber, and it's a decrease from last year because they no longer are paying rent at Parkland Mall. So this shows that we were supporting that transition over here. So they reduced it for that. And all the rest, I've got the same number as last year. If we want to look at the detail, we'll go to, this is really teeny for you guys. So this is the DOSDC budget. So basically ECDEV services, talk to Carly, keep it the same as last year. These are actuals. This is last year's budget. This is the current year budget. So we've kept it fairly similar, a few ups and downs based on actuals, but nothing too new and exciting there. It's relatively consistent. And then tourism, I've increased. So right now we have 62,000 of MRDT money. We just received another 7,500 for the month of September. So, which is good. We're getting more than we originally estimated. So I've increased that estimate for 80,000 for the 2022 year, and as well as the 33,500 we top them up. So they'll have $113,000 worth of destination marketing funds. And it's, this money has to be, this budget here ties to what Carly has submitted to Destination BC for their MRDT budget. It's because it's very much governed by them. So these are the actuals, last year's budget, and then we've modified this year's budget based on last year's actual and the plans moving forward for the MRDT funds.
So, sorry, just for clarification, Kelly, just in my head, the DOS gives tourism $33,000 and the MRDT is now doing this. So at some point, well, the DOS will back out of that and MRDT will take over and support the tourism.
That 100% last year council agreed to 5 years of support if we were successful with MRDT to help top that up. And then after that, it's gone.
Okay, thanks. I couldn't remember. Any other comments?
And that was also done because, no, we didn't withdraw from tourism. I think that was when we were closer to withdrawing from economic development too, and money we had saved somewhere else, we reallocated there. But okay, so nothing too surprising there. And then I've got the draft visitor information service agreement with the chamber. So there's a few new things I just wanted to highlight. I've sent this to Sheila, who's also talked to her board about it, and we've made a few little revisions to make it more current. So this is for a 1-year term. So for the 2022 year, as well as the ability to renew for another year. So this agreement would technically be good for 2 years. Some points that were changed other than the dollar value is previously we had the hours of operation that we wanted there, but it always changed. And I think that was done in the past because we were uncertain of what the hours were. So we've kept it a little bit more general, saying the Visitor Information Center will have operational hours geared to meeting the needs of the traveling community, which includes 7 days a week in peak seasons. If you're okay with that. We decreased the number to 63,500. We've added the district will provide office space for the operations of the visitor information services at 446 Main Street at no cost, because we do that. That's part of the agreement. And then we've changed the reporting. So this had said quarterly reporting. However, quarterly reporting isn't really happening. So we modified this to an annual basis. If council wants to change it back to quarterly, we're more than happy to do that. We just thought that on an annual basis, that they would report on operations as well as their financial situation 3 months after the chamber's year end.
Okay, any comments? Jeff?
What did we actually give to the chamber? Like before they were actually handling events and stuff and a lot of other things. And now they're not handling events. And we've hired a person to do this sort of thing with oversee the recreation and our infrastructure. So like at one point before the chamber ever got involved in events and before they ever got to this, I think the total amount of money we gave to them was 45,000. Now we're giving them 78, almost 80,000 still, and we provide them a place to rent. So I want to know exactly what services we are getting for that money. Like that's a lot of money compared to what it used to be. But then when they were handling events, we upped that money. So it appears to me that we haven't reduced the money and they're not handling events. So like, how come this is staying that high?
And I'm more than happy to get the budget from Sheila. When they, depending on what year it was, we used to pay them additionally for event services, but that was prior to Johnny coming here, because then we got money from the CSRD to help us support that. And Johnny supported both the chamber and the district of Sicamous in his services. We've been giving them around 66,000 for the last 3 years. I want to say 3 to 4, and a lot, it did jump up because we started to do they started to do the visitor information on the go. And so that whole piece requires more labor, even though they get subsidized for a portion of that. I know there was a whole, if we want visitor information on the go there, that piece was a little bit more. I can ask Sheila to give me a breakdown of where that money is going.
To answer, we didn't pay Sheila to do music in the park, or sorry, we didn't pay the chamber to do music in the park.
No.
That was something that they took on their own so they could increase their revenue and support, have more support for themselves. But we've never paid them for events.
Yeah. So through the chair, if I'm right, like, so you got 63,000 and then you got 15,000 below that for info on the go. So they've got a line item adding it into the budget anyway. So, a long time ago, I would not join the chamber because their fees were ridiculously low for a service that they're supposed to provide to the businesses. So somewhere along the line, the chamber needs to raise those fees so that they cover some of their costs so that the taxpayers overall subsidize the Chamber of Commerce, because the chamber's there to represent the local businesses. And if they want to have a chamber, then they should be supporting it. They used to have auctions that you went and buy junk from somebody else so that they could raise money. So you had stuff at your place that you got from the other guy anyway. So they don't do that anymore because we're really generous. I'm just suggesting that somewhere we have to, as a responsible council, have the chamber become, it should be an almost self-sufficient organization.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't start pushing, we're just going to keep paying indefinitely.
And I know that was a concern, and that's why when they present us the financial information, they have to show us both separately. They used to put that all together, but now we've got them to separate it so we can see exactly where our dollars are going. And I know that their year end is coming up, so I can make sure that I can get exactly where that dollar is going. You have a few summer students that eats up 20,000 really quick. And that 15,000 that you said for info on the go, that is, they get a grant from Destination BC. We've never actually paid that 15,000. That's just in case they don't get that funding, that they're still able to provide that service. So we actually only still give them 63.5. That is only a buffer that we've never had to use. And it's only if they don't get that grant for that, to cover a portion of that service.
And it is, we have to remember, we're supporting the Visitor Information Center. Those are tourists coming, that has nothing to do really, the chamber's looking after that piece of business. So most of that money is going to the Visitor Information Center. Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, through the chair, maybe, like you say, Kelly, maybe it'd be wise to have Sheila come in, once they get their financial, their year end done, come in and do just a short presentation in one of our finance meetings that we can, narrow down if we get that information ahead of time.
Mhm.
we can Review it.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, probably inappropriate. So we give the chamber money and then the chamber doesn't support what our staff recommends for development permits.
I would, the chamber supports the businesses in the community, not necessarily just the council. So they hear from all the businesses. So their job is support the business. Council speaks for the people, right?
No, it's
Chamber of
not.
Commerce speaks.
It's staff. Staff is processing applications and the chamber is telling staff that they shouldn't approve certain applications.
Based on businesses,
Council.
does staff go, oh, sorry, Scott, I'll just finish. Does staff go out and talk to all the businesses in town? Go ahead, Scott.
No, they don't. We advertise in the newspaper and we send out, referrals within a certain meter for applications. So we don't necessarily go out and target businesses and ask them. But maybe just to answer Councilor McCabe's question, I've always found that the chamber adds a lot to the referral process and I've actually found it works almost a little bit better when there's a bit of an adversarial role than when I've actually I was actually a member of the Chamber of Commerce, where I worked before in Elkford. We were a member of the chamber and I was actually vice president of the Chamber of Commerce. And I was always saying to the chamber, you guys need to be involved in this. You guys need to, as a board, make a recommendation. You need to be involved. And I find it works better when they are involved.
Yeah, great. I'm not for it. I was just curious about.
Go ahead, Jeff.
And that was my point exactly. That's what the chamber is supposed to do. They represent the businesses. And as Scott said, the businesses have the right to comment and the chamber's their voice. And that's what the process is supposed to be. But the chamber, I'm very interested. I don't care that the tourism part is fine. That chamber balance sheet needs to not be getting a dime from the district taxpayer.
Thanks, Jeff. Terry?
Yeah, so regarding the chamber, and this has been ongoing for some time now, and the importance of a very strong chamber in your community is extremely important. And from my experience with living in other communities, I see as the community grows, this figure should probably start to decrease instead of increase, because they should be having, revenue streams based on membership and whatnot. And I can see, the support that the chamber gives us on a economic development side of it. And even though we do have some complications, I mean, this is the decisions that they make at their board table. But I think a very strong chamber in a community is essential to a community moving forward when it comes to growth. And we have been supporting the chamber now since I've been on council, and I think pretty much the same figure almost every year, but I can see the chamber and I can see this number going down.
Gordon?
I think, sure, I've been involved in the chamber back in the 80s. I was on the board and in the 90s, and the chamber's always, in a small community, the Chamber of Commerce has always been supplemented in some way by different organizations in the community. And it's a tough gig to make a living on a membership fee of $150 or $200. So it needs support, and we need a strong chamber, no question.
I agree. And at one point, I think we discussed maybe having business licenses swing over towards the chamber so they could do the business license and a membership kind of in a package, and that might support the chamber a little bit more. Go ahead, Gord.
I'll just add, and Scott invited the chamber to actually on all the referrals now, so it all goes through the planning department. And they, and their businesses, when it gets controversial or whatever you want to call it, they weigh in with their members and their members speak. And
That's a good idea.
it's starting to work pretty good, Scott.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, no, I support the chamber 100%. And I think, I think we give them free office space and like support that. I support the chamber. I agree with all the statements of the mayor and Councillor Bushel that chamber is an integral part of our community.
Go ahead.
We discussed the idea of adding that chamber fee onto the business license, I think, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And I think that it's about time that we actually do that. And that because there's a lot of people that aren't a member of a chamber. And I mean, I don't even know what their fees are today, but at one time they were only like $85 and then $100. I don't even know what the chamber fees are today to be a member. But if you have a business in town, it should be mandatory that you're a member of the chamber. And so I think that they're probably missing 65% of them because there's a lot of people that just don't participate in it. Our major businesses in town do, but for the most part, all the home-based ones are missing it. And if they got involved in it and they were a part of it, you would have a stronger chamber and they would have sufficient funds to do what they need to do.
I don't know if you can force feed a membership. I think people need to see the value in it. And I also think that it's something that you have to sell. You just can't make people, mandatory that, you're moving to town, you're getting a chamber membership. They see the value and a lot of them are swinging over. Like, you know what, if you guys read Sheila's newsletter or the chamber's newsletter just the other day, I think there's 4 new businesses in there, 4 new chamber members. So it is growing, but we are a small community and it's going to take some time. Okay, are we good with this? We beat this horse to death?
Yeah, no, that was good. And I will at the next, if it's not at the next finance meeting, it will be at a meeting shortly thereafter. I'll get some budget to actuals just from Sheila, just so we know where we're at and where that money that we've been giving her has been spent this last year. So, and then we have biofuel. So I've grouped this in my financial reporting with economic development. It's an initiative of the DOSDC. And really the whole point in the industrial park is to create economic development initiatives, and there's a little bit of revenue. So what I've done for this is a very high level, very assumption-based net income. This is based on, I reached out to John and Dave and they gave me, it should make about $10,000 a year. That's still the number that I was given. This may change, but for now I'm being conservative. Let's say it's operating for 6 months. So I've just divided that by 2. It's not very complicated math. I did actually reach out to MIA and get a quote on insuring that, and it's just about over $1,000 for insurance. So you take the $1,000 off. I've got net revenue of $4,500 for the 2022 year for BioHeat. We'll see where it ends up by shaking out. With all the other developments happening over there, maybe not this year, but next year, we perhaps could see a nice little bit of revenue stream there. Not sure, but for now, that's what I've got.
Comments? Okay.
Okay. And then we're going on to operations and community development. Okay, so this is a new item that was put on here. It's the #1 strategic priority, and we thought some money should be going to something to start some preliminary cost estimates for a pedestrian bridge. If we ever want to make that pedestrian bridge a reality, we need to start getting some plans done up.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Yeah, so help me out here, Kelly and Evan. So I thought, I did a Zoom meeting yesterday for active transportation. And part of that was the executive director for budgets, grants for active transportation. Forget the guy's name already, Jesse. So he's a younger guy, a millennium, I guess. And he's really big on shovel ready. That's all I basically nugget I took away, shovel ready. And so we've got a $50,000 grant for active transportation. And he's the guy that approves those.
Mhm.
Him and his assistant, get her name to Jackie, and I'm not sure. Anyhow, I wrote it down and didn't bring my notes with me. With our $50,000 grant, is it possible to one of my pet little projects is to get the connection from Highway 97 to the dog park. You know, there's a pedestrian active button to stop the traffic in the Trans-Canada and a crosswalk to go across the Trans-Canada to nowhere. It's just a short little connection, and the optics would look so bad if we got this brand new bridge with a pathway on a bridge that goes nowhere also, you know, on the south side of the bridge. So I think it's sort of paramount as, I know we're talking pedestrian bridge here, but in the feasibility study, so going from what Jesse says, you need to have an active transportation plan as an output and use that as an input for grant applications to get money for seed money for what we're talking here for the pedestrian bridge. I thought that was our process. I thought we were waiting for the completion of our active transportation grant study. And then that document would be used as an input into applying for money to get this pedestrian bridge kickstarted. Do we not want to try and use grant money, or is that time frame too long, or are you suggesting we start now?
Well,
Another question there, sort of quickly, I'll just throw.
Yeah.
is, I know our previous operations manager got a blanket approval for archaeological work specific to the pedestrian bridge, but not specific to Main Street Landing, if you will. It's supposed to be spread along the channel. So we have approval from Splats and written approval to do archaeological work. Maybe we should start initiating some of the archaeological work, start at Main Street Landing, but then work south along the channel, if you will, because Splatson approved through the concept of a pedestrian bridge in the form of approving to do archaeological work as investigation work towards a bridge, but they didn't say yes to the location of the bridge. But I think that document is important to show that they have said yes to the concept of a bridge, but not to the location. So a few questions in there. Would we not use the output of the active transportation plan to as an input document to grant applications to get some money for this? And should we not be spending some money on archaeological work? Because that's going to be the most time consuming and the most sensitive also.
okay, you want to start?
Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Chair. So maybe like, and we're kind of speaking to the next item as well, which is the transportation trails study.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got, 100,000 here, which is exactly what you're talking about.
So we did go out for an RFP for the active transportation network plan that closed on Monday. And so Daryl and Jason and I will, and Jeremy will go over the what we received and choose somebody to work with. One of the things we did in that RFP was we really put in there that we wanted, priority projects, and we wanted cost estimates of like 10 projects that we can actually work on instead of just, more of a philosophical transportation thing. We wanted those projects to be identified so we are shovel ready, because you're exactly right with the active transportation network plan is a requirement for Ministry of Transportation to get any of their grant money. So that's why we aimed at having the shelf ready things. I imagine the pedestrian bridge will be a big component of that if it's like, the number one priority and we can get a little bit of an estimate. But again, it's, the money that's budgeted there outside of the active transportation plan is probably going to be needed as well. And maybe, and I think once we have that plan in place and, we'll work with council on the plan as well. There'll be a presentation to council. You can identify those priorities and direct where that money can go. So I think we'll have it covered off pretty well. And over the next couple of months, we'll get a better idea of what it's going to look like.
Yeah, if I just.
Jeff is next. Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair, thank you. In that transportation trails network study, you go to the bottom there, SP8 flood protection plan implementation. That's something the district's invested $350,000 into, and it's got to be determined on it. And we applied for a grant once upon a time for a small amount of money to start this project. So somewhere there, that's supposed to be part of our network trail infrastructure as well. So I'm thinking that you must include this up there. And now because of what happened at a planning committee meeting on Wednesday, there was somebody applied for putting in block wall, which is not part of our thing. And so the marina, their wall also collapsed. So, and at one time we spoke with them and they were interested in contributing to, they would give up land for. So although they have no development, but that's a big thing in the community for our walkability is that trail along there. So somewhere along there, we need to get this thing, get some feet underneath of it because they've been taking land for that trail for 22 years now. White Pines donated, Riverside condos donated. This is 22 years that people have been giving up land and there's still zero there, nothing. So if we're going to sit on our laurels and wait, that's why the flood mitigation plan was brought into. I was the guy that said, look, you guys keep going down this road trying to build this walkway, get land from them when we have a flooding issue. So if we use the flood as the right to protect land, we have a way of coming up with creating that walkway. So we need to get this one moving as well. And it should be seriously a part of that because even get to your rail trail, to your bridge, that will be a way to get there.
Thanks. Okay, Malcolm.
Yeah, so are we combining these two because they're sort of,
Sounds like we're combining three of them.
okay, thank you.
And so these are funded from operating reserves, which means it doesn't have a direct impact on taxes. So we're knowing that, you know, we will have to do some kind of estimate at some point, and there's this massive plan that needs to happen, and there's lots of other moving parts, recognizing that the pedestrian bridge is really important to the community and the connection, that having a little extra money there for whatever arises, then that way we just have it there. If nothing happens, it doesn't affect taxes. The grant that you're talking about is this next 100,000, which is last year we had 50,000, we made it 100, and we're doing 50 from our operating reserve and 50 from the grant that we got. So we can really get a lot of good information from that.
Malcolm and Terry.
Okay, so I support the 30 on a bridge and thank you for doing that. Because yeah, we should have some money in the budget line there else. And it's a number one strategic priority and it's not budgeted for anything. So yeah, 30,000, great. For the 100,000, for that, I don't know whether it's a $50,000 grant, active transportation, or the other 50,000, but I would request staff that, you know, that section that I talked about from connecting 97 to Sycamore Squells, the dog park, let's say, a path along Trans-Canada Highway connecting to Sycamore Bridge, to our new path on our bridge. If we can have use this money for design drawings for, you know, not just a cost estimate, but ready to go to tender on it. I don't think it would cost more than 50 grand to connect that trail. I looked at the lamp standards. There's lighting already there for signs. So you might need one lamp standard in the middle, have a paved walkway. It doesn't have to be concrete curb and gutters, but a 3-meter path. It might encroach on highway right of way. So hopefully part of this research, if you could focus whoever the consultant is to say, that's the priority to connect. We're separated by Eagle River and the bridge. The bridge is going to have a pathway on it. The last piece is connecting Sycamore South Squaw Bridge to Highway 97 pedestrian path on the Trans-Canada Highway. So it needs to have a design and a cost estimate and be shovel ready for this spring, I think, that section. If we can ask our consultant, whoever is a lead proponent, to make that one of the, you mentioned 10 priority shovel ready. I think that could be a really quick win. And it would show the public that, yes, we can actually plan and not just build a bridge with a nice path on it that goes nowhere, but connect it to our existing path.
Thanks, Malcolm. Okay, Terry.
Now, most of my points have been already discussed, so I don't have any more comments.
Okay, Gord, I got you. Jeff.
Yeah, through the chair, I agree with Malcolm. It's an easy win, that one. And I kind of thought maybe, I mean, I agree with everything we're saying here with the numbers. But maybe Scott, if you and Daryl and the crew want to, I'd love to get involved just in a quick trail planning meeting, like an hour or two or whatever. And just kind of go over all our map and our whole trail system. Because there's lots of trails that we have in the community that aren't really noted. And you just need a little bit of funding to make them better, like the one that goes from the houseboat through the trees, and it actually connects to where Malcolm wants to, where the bridge is. And I've had numerous people in Silver Sands ask me about that trail, if it could just be upgraded just a little bit. And so it would be nice to have just a short little trails meeting or network trail. We could also get involved with our Blue Way Trail that the Shuswap Trail Alliance was planning. And I just recommend it. It'd be nice to do.
Thanks, Gord. Jeff?
Well, it's kind of funny that staff never mentioned this, but it was only Evan and Terry and myself at the MOTI meeting that they had here in the room. And basically, MOTI is going to come up with a
Speak up, Jeff.
transportation corridor access from Silver Sands Road to the Sycamore South Spot Road Bridge. They were only going to 97, and it was suggested that they go to the bridge so that they have something of what it's going to look like and access. So I think that part of their thing, and if we have the conversation with them, should involve the idea of that pathway you're talking about and the connectivity, because it is highways. And so they do have pathway along the side of the highway. So look, they're doing that study anyway, and it's supposed to be done. What was the date that they were talking about? Similar to ours, we're running current, aren't we?
Yeah,
So they're gonna have theirs done sometime for the spring.
yeah.
And if we have ours done sometime for the spring, then we should have that information available.
That's, thanks, Jeff, that's a good idea. I mean, Gordon came up with a good idea. Just sit down with operations and planning and look at the whole big picture. And if MOTI can add in that, then we can just look at one big overlay of what's going on as opposed to all these little pieces. Go ahead, Malcolm.
Thank you. My one other takeaway I got from the meeting yesterday, a nugget was just the executive director who approves all these grants is you need an active transportation plan. It has to be shovel ready and active transportation. Well, I've got a brain fart on the third one. And I'm sorry about that. Multi-use. If in your application for the grant, you say it's multi-use, it goes higher up. Those are the three top boxes to tick when we're doing grants. You have to have active transportation plan in place. The project has to be shovel ready and call it multi-use. So it just has to be 3 meters wide to be eligible to be classified as multi-use for cyclists and pedestrians. So
Already have that.
Terry?
Yeah, so we're going through budgetary process right now, and I think the concern would be regarding what you're trying to accomplish here is are we comfortable with the 80, the 100 and the $60,000 that's in the budget in order to accomplish all of these things? I think based on what Malcolm's saying, under the request transportation and trails network and the active transportation plan, I mean, it could be covered under that umbrella. So that's the question for council, in my opinion, is do we have enough in the budget right now? It's 30, 100, we got $190,000. And the one thing that has come on board with us is the municipal boundary expansion, and that's an additional expense that we're going to be taking on. So that has to be, something that has to be taken a serious look at. So anyway, that's
Thanks. One more. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, so, and not in opposition to what Councilor McCabe is talking about, but the flood mitigation plan of that walkway has been there for a lot longer than this new idea about get up from a traffic light to the bridge, right? So if you're gonna spend $50,000 on that, I'd go, why wouldn't you put that money towards getting it? Because there is a document in here called Flood Protection Plan Implementation. And if you read that, there's some funding required to get to, I thought that the study that we paid $360,000 for got us pretty close to that. But now I find out we got to spend probably another $200,000 to get to the point where we can actually put a staple in the ground. Like, it's retarded. Like, why don't we just do like Brian said? Why don't we just build it and forget it?
Go ahead, Jeff, or Gord.
Yeah, and just quick for Scott, Carly's been working on some trail stuff too. And yeah, she'd be good to have involved in that meeting as well.
Okay, so for now, are we good with these numbers?
Yes.
Okay, for now,
Yep, for now, and
thank you.
as new information arises or something changes, they're not set in stone. We don't finalize the budget until March, which then they are set in stone. Okay, so moving right along, municipal boundary expansion, this was a new strategic priority in the year. I have a number of 60,000 in the budget right now, and I've got it funded from a grant and from contributions from the owners that want to do this boundary expansion. I don't know if that's actually going to be the case. That's how it was last year. We talked to the grant providers and they will partially fund this. We did an RFP that closed in October and there was nobody who wanted to do the work. So we didn't get any responses from the RFP. So it's just been sitting there. I guess we'll have to reissue that, or just wanted to bring it up with council to see if there's still an appetite to pursue this. If we wanted to, instead of having the developer or the owner group who wants to be part of the municipal boundary, does the district of Sycamoose want to pay the other piece? And that's really what my question is, and whether we want to keep it on the books.
Okay, Ryan, then Jeff.
To the chair, I was only in favor of that expansion study at the time because it wasn't being funded by taxpayers.
Jeff.
Well, the net result is a higher tax base to the community. So if you spend $60,000 and you actually, the annexation process goes ahead, then you're adding a big lump of some money to the bottom line anyway. So we're already providing some services to that area. And we actually increased our capacity so that we could supply services to that area, water, sewer, and the rest of it. So I honestly think that there hasn't been a lot of conversation with people that we're talking about joining the district of Sycamoose. And so I would like to confirm that they're still interested in becoming, because we got a petition requested that they become a part of the district of Sycamoose. That doesn't happen very often that you get a petition to be annexed in. Okay. So now there were a couple people that we had names for, and I guess nobody contacted them that were interested in doing the study. So, and I don't know whether that was part of the package or you just put it out on Bid BC and got no response. So, but there was two companies that had expressed an interest.
I did receive communication from one proponent that just said it was a capacity issue on their end and that if it was in March, that they would be more open. So I think potentially it was the timing of the RFP issue. So we would certainly issue it in the new year.
So I would suggest that we leave the 60 there, and because that portfolio was given to me, I'll confirm this if there's still an interest in this, and then we can decide if we want to proceed.
It's your portfolio anyway, isn't it? Okay, go ahead.
No, I agree, Councilor Mullins.
That's rare.
What else is good?
We're fighting this battle right now, so.
Okay, so for now, I'll leave it in there as funded from grants or developers, so it won't affect taxes, and I'll confirm, we still have a few months, I'll confirm with Councilor Malmus, the owner group or the interested party is at, and before we finalize the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So this is new but not new. I've got a Dcc bylaw update on here. I know we reviewed our bylaw in 2018. However, there are some key infrastructure projects that are not included in there, and there's other ones that maybe should be excluded in the project list, which then affects the DCCs that we are collecting as more development is occurring. As we look forward to the future, we just want to make sure we have sufficient funds to pay for required infrastructure. You'll see next week when we talk capital, Our sewer reserves, which used to be healthy, are now going to be fully depleted shortly. Just there's more work there than was originally anticipated. In addition, if there some things like the pedestrian bridges and different items like that that should be potentially in the DCC project list, and remove other ones like Beach Park that's in there, which we've already done the upgrade for. There's also some potential work that could be done on intersections on the highway with at either Rama or Old Town for future growth, that maybe we need to look at something there too. Just it wouldn't, we have discussed internally at staff that the DCC bylaw could use another look at to make sure we're capturing what we need to.
Okay, everyone good? Jeff?
So you're just looking for what the DCC funds should be used for, not to just,
Affects everything.
but not, are you talking about discussing an increase to DCCs?
Or it depends on what it is. The project list is what determines the DCC rate. So the project list we feel like isn't sufficient for our future projects. And some of them are good. Our water seems to be fine, but our sewer, we definitely need to revisit, as well as some of our parks stuff.
Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, through the chair, I support this. This is really important as we seem to have a little bit of an expansion growth going on right now in the community. And I think it's really important that we take a good overall look at it.
Jeff?
So we spent 2 or 3 years manipulating our DCCs to the lowest anyway. And so are we in that? Is that the idea? Are we going to, we're going to have a discussion about DCCs. I think that I'm going to request that the staff come back with what the DCC charges are in the neighboring communities again.
100%. It is a very, the projects are tied to the DCC rate. So yes, there will be changes. We are not doing this behind closed doors. This will be all open. It's more just to identify what are our future infrastructural requirements because of growth. Because it seems like it's starting to happen, and we just want to make sure that there's funds set aside for that growth, so it's not borne by the taxpayer for things that are required specifically for sewer. Right, so there right now, if you're a new developer, you pay nothing for sewer DCCs, which is great for the developer. But when we have when we're not meeting our treatment capacities and we got to spend another 700,000 on something, then it's the taxpayer who pays for all of it. So we just want to make sure I think at this point, we just want to take a look at it to make sure we feel good about it for financial planning in the future. Doesn't mean we even have to make those changes really, but I think it's worth a look at.
Okay, any other comments, Gord?
Well, just to add that, you know, there's some major growth that could be happening, and if sewer really needs to pick up the pace, this is where we can take advantage of it.
Okay. Malcolm?
So a question to the chair, thank you to the staff. We recently just created a line item for housing, and we're talking about establish a housing committee, and we haven't had our first meeting yet, but we have to go over an old document and revise that to meet the current needs. And we just got a draft needs analysis for housing needs analysis. Is housing, affordable housing, or attainable housing captured in DCCs?
No,
Is
it's
it when that's
water, sewer, and
allowed?
I don't think so. I'd have to look into it, but we can waive DCCs on housing, but I don't think we can apply DCCs to housing. There's other mechanisms. So I know in Langford, for example, if there was for new developments, they required some developers to give an amount. So depending like $1,000 or $2,000, and it would go into a housing reserve. So there's another mechanism that you can collect for housing requirements on new development, but it's not through a DCC.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, we're good. Okay,
Okay, and another riveting topic, asset management. So we have a grant to finish this up. So hopefully we will be able to present to council this year a summary of our assets and the cost to replace these assets. So it'll tie better to our financial planning. And so we really know where we're sitting. And this is all funded from grants, so we're good. And this next discussion could be a little longer. It relates to the flood protection implementation plan. And this is what Councillor Momas was talking about it. Staff has talked about it, and we are basically, when we talked to, I don't know if it was staff or at UBCM, the UBCM meetings, they said, if you want to get money or move, they said, this is the sheet from the flood protection plan that we need to start making the steps. This summarizes it nicely. So what we need to do to make these things happen, and there's a lot of things on here, and how much money do we want to put towards it? Do we want to do something in 2022? Do we want to set up a reserve that we start putting money in so we can start doing these things? Because we have to acquire land 10 years. There's studies that need to be done, archaeological impact. There's also, I know they said, talk to the deputy of dikes, like there's a lot of other work that is required to do. So really from a staff perspective, we don't know how serious and how much money council feels like throwing at it tomorrow, like 2022, it's a long-term reserve versus current year. Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, through the chair, this is really important. You know, we've talked about this for 7 years, and it's basically our, you know, from the water, it's our first impression of Sycamoose. And I just think with all the disasters and flooding that's been going on, there's going to be all kinds of pots of money coming for flood protection, and we should try to take advantage of this and also include it in our walkway, because our walkway is, you know, it's so important. And there's people on the channel that want to spend money on retaining walls, and I think we should really, you know, narrow this down and get on it. I do.
Head Jeff.
So it's my portfolio, and I think that what should happen is, I think Gord's the alternative on it, that Gord and I should have set up some meetings with the people, Reds, the guy that owns the property next door that wanted the block wall, that marina whose wall collapsed already, and they want to do something. And that Gord and I should see if we could set up a meeting with those people from there to the old Main Street Bridge landing, and see if we can get enough commitment from them and apply for grant funding, because they're willing to pay to replace their wall. And so if we could tie it into doing, and I don't know what the cost of the block wall was as compared to the sheet piling, but some time ago I had a rough estimate of what it would cost to sheet pile the entire channel. It was just under $2 million. Now, that's by a company that does it, but without Kerwin Liddell adding 500,000 for engineering and another bunch for some other questions. So I don't know what the number would be, but without building a subsection, we can't come up with what the actual lineal cost would be. And if you have owners who already have damaged walls, I think it's an opportunity to request from them, like they're going to rebuild their wall. They already have the tenure in place, and it would be a repair, not a new application. The archaeological side of it, I don't know whether you're going to dig underneath the existing rock wall. That would be to be determined by staff. But I think the first thing to do would be have a conversation with those people that are right there that are already contributing or could want to rebuild their wall, and then come back and go, get a number. It wouldn't take very long. Go to Landmark and get a request for that many lineal feet of sheet piling, and you get a pretty quick number. Then you could find out whether it was real or not.
I agree. I think this was a priority of council, the flood mitigation. I remember in 2012, I remember just going out of our condo and being in knee-deep water just off our lawn. So, and I think that we chose sheet metal because it self-dredges as opposed to concrete. So I mean, you want longevity in this, right? If it costs more, you don't want to keep doing this, right? So you have to do it right to start with. And I agree. I think we're going to see more and more flooding, like even at Old Town Bay, I can just hear that creek. It sounds like spring up there. It's just crazy. So I think we need to do something to protect the community. Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, well, it's without question, that council would be supporting this. The question is, what are we going to throw at this in order to, what are we going to put in the budget? How are we going to go about this? And I think this is a challenge for staff, and especially with Scott and how we can, put this in place. I mean, I think one of the biggest problems with most of the flooding in BC right now is instead of being proactive, everybody's being reactive. And now they're starting to, in Abbotsford, they're starting to build the dikes to where they need to be built. And so, yeah, it's just a matter of the number and how we move forward with this.
Go ahead, Jeff.
So if we put any number in there, is it going to be a tax increase?
Well, it depends on how big that number is, right? So really, I guess operationally, do we want to throw money at it right this second? Or do we want to set up a reserve and I can put money into that, knowing we're going to be spending money at it with it? And depending on how big that number is, will depend on whether it's coming from the operating reserve, because that reserve is getting smaller each year. So
we already have a plan, right? We hired a consultant, so we do have the information that we need.
and this came out of that.
So that was the page out of,
Yeah, so when we talked to the staff at the province, they said, well, your report lays it out great, just follow page, whatever page this is. And so this is the one pager where they said, this is what you need to do.
so, and we did get grant funding for a portion of this already, correct?
All of it
100%.
And where did that go?
to this plan.
Okay, there wasn't any money allocated to the work itself.
Correct.
I thought there was as well. Sorry, Jeff. I think
100 meters.
exactly.
Oh, that was a separate application
And we didn't get it.
through the chair. We didn't get the funding. That was it. The money that went to Kerwin Liddell was to do this study. It was 100% grant funding, and they spent every dime of it. It took them 2 years, which that didn't make me very happy. It's,
How are we going to do it?
now we got no funding left, but because of the thing, I think that one of the things that should be added in there to be determined
Mhm.
is the grant funders need this information, is what we're saying. Do we need to get the shovel ready, or is there another grant that we can apply for flood mitigation to actually do the work?
So when we were talking, there is, and I'm not sure of the threshold, but it's all about disaster recovery, and it's under, I believe, 30 million or over 30 million. They're looking at really big projects, and there's 2 big funding groups. So we need to we need to make sure these steps are done so we can go after the below 30 million or over 30 million disaster recovery grants. That's where we'll get large dollars for completing this project, but we don't have all of our ducks in a row yet for that. And they said one of the biggest things was lobbying and getting the applicable approvals from a water perspective.
Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, through the chair, I mentioned to Evan and Jeff the other morning, that one of our locals, Ross Gallant, who was involved in the bridge over there. And Jeff does sheet stuff too, but he's in Calgary right now, and he's doing a major section of the flooded in Calgary, the big flood. So he's actually doing sheet piling right now in Calgary, and he's doing the big long area. And yeah, it's all federal and provincial funded.
Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, thanks for that, Gord, and to the chair. So, yeah, so I've been in conversation with Ross as well. So he's got a drone that's taking pictures of this right now, and he's also going to inform us of the process and how they were able to finance this through federal reserves and so forth. So I think he can be a great help when it comes to us maybe moving forward with this and having that conversation with him.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I agree. We before we do the to be determined number, we need to get a little bit more information. And one of the big things is that like this flood mitigation thing was 100% funded, but not all grants are 100% funded. Usually we have to contribute something, a third or 50% or 25% or however it works. Usually the community has to contribute to most grants. And if you don't have the contribution funds in place, so my discussion that I mentioned earlier to have with a couple of members along there to see what they would be willing to commit to, because they got to replace their wall anyway. And now you're going to upgrade their wall. I'm not saying they pay 100% of the price of what the project we saw was, but you just negotiate a deal with them, cover that portion that has to be contributed to get access to the grant funding. That would be the objective of it.
So Kelly, do we need to put a number in there to get this answers to this sheet?
That's a great point. So I've got start the consultation process for along the channel. And what I'll do for now is I'll allocate some funds into a reserve. So I'll start basically saving money for flood work. What that necessarily will look like, we don't have to have an answer right now. And the number that I'll put in reserves, I don't know yet. I'll take a look at everything together and we'll see what I can squeeze in there. And I'll let you know when we revisit everything in February. That sound about okay?
Okay, we're good? Okay,
We need to put some money towards it on a consistent basis. Okay. Okay, so, a good news piece. Oh, no, not this one, sorry.
Oh, that's not good
It's
news.
a different one. No, sorry, I just saw MFA payments. So MFA payments for housing land, housing is strategic priority number 5. So last year in the budget, we had $250,000 to be financed through MFA debt for the acquisition of land 433 Main Street and any other kind of surveying work that would need to be done over there. At the end of the day, because that whole lot is being now used for housing, all the costs of that, which are about $340,000, there's actually a staff report coming to the next council meeting to authorize MFA payments. So what I'm proposing is that of the the 340 is for 433 Main Street, as well as all the demolition of the houses, the arc work, and the removal of the trees, the net cost of the removal of the trees. So getting all that land prepped for housing costs us about 340. So we're going to use 40,000 from our land reserve and 300,000 for MFA debt. So then that would be 5 years of repayment at 60,000 a year. It's not a big change from last year because last year I had 50,000 in there for debt. So it's just a difference of 10,000 between the two budget years. So
go ahead, Malcolm. Thanks, Kelly.
I'd like to thank Kelly very much for doing that. Because if you didn't do that, it would come out of our grant money. And it's getting chiseled away and we want to use that for actually building, well, architectural and building or whatever instead of this. So it keeps, yeah, thank you very much. I support that 100%.
Any other comments? You're good. You're good, Kelly.
and we do have a housing reserve off the top of my head. I don't know how much is in it, but and I do have a call with Bill to look at exactly what, if any, operational costs we may extend in 2022 as we go through the development of the housing project over there. So I'm anticipating there will be some costs, whether it's next year or the year after, but we'll fine tune those in the next few months.
Oh, just 1 sec. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, it's not related to the finance, but the Habitat for Humanity, there's Malcolm, I think Ryan and myself, or I'm just wondering when we're gonna actually have a sit down with that.
That's a great point.
It's been scheduled.
Evan, then Malcolm.
Yeah, it's been scheduled. Let me just confirm the time and that.
Well, there's a request put out to community for additional members, 3 additional members. And the cutoff date for that is January 28th. So I don't envision a meeting until those 3 positions are filled. So I'm thinking sometime after the end of January.
So December 13th, 3 p.m. Eagle Valley, BC Housing, DOS, Habitat for Humanity, the original stakeholders meeting.
And
Okay,
Okay,
go ahead, Malcolm.
is that a housing committee meeting?
No, this is Eagle Valley,
Original sticker.
C Housing, DOS Habitat for Humanity.
Then who's invited?
Go ahead, Malcolm.
Could I request one more invitation?
Sure. It's an original stakeholders meeting. We can invite anybody and everybody. I mean, to me,
I'll just share this with Cal.
So-
There's another not-for-profit housing society in
Yes.
Sycamoose now. It's called Sycamoose Housing. Society,
show up.
and
December 13th, it was just
they would appreciate an invite.
Bill Miller confirmed, Dylan from Urban Systems is confirmed, Eagle Valley's confirmed, BC Housing's confirmed.
So I have a hat. I'm a board member on that new society.
Getting an invite.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
Will, through the chair, will Ryan and I get an invite to this as well?
Oh, no. This is confidential.
Well, then I'll
We'll make sure you get it.
It's a stakeholders meeting, yes. Yeah, you'll get invites.
Scott, did you have a comment?
get in the way.
Okay,
Perfect.
let's carry on.
Yep, good housing discussion. So daycare operating costs, the childcare services is strategic priority number 6. So I've actually decreased the operating costs. I originally had budgeted 17,300 for the cost of just the building, but it actually was a lot lower. It was 6,300 year to date so far. And this is just, some snow removal, some random replacing some light bulbs. I don't know, the dishwasher that doesn't work, those odd things that need to be fixed. So I've reduced that to 9,500. And this I've got funded from grant revenue because any deficit here is covered by the COVID grant for the next 4 years. Okay, and then any comments on the daycare?
Go ahead, Gordon. Then Malcolm.
Going to pull a warranty card on the dishwasher?
Yeah.
Malcolm?
Counselor Bob Evans is not here, and it's I'm secondary in his portfolio there. I'm just wondering if this will change because, how is those things go?
Hey, go ahead, Terry.
Is the right venue for this?
To the chair, I see, this is a tough one, but at the end of the day, it's 9,500 and it's covered by the COVID grant. So I think we should keep this in the budget.
This in the budget, Kate, everybody okay with 9,500 in the budget?
Well,
No.
I wouldn't mind my question being answered because it could impact this figure.
I think this figure could be changed though as well, because we're still in early stages. Go
Later.
ahead, Evan.
No, we have not had that meeting yet. We are planning to have that meeting. We fully understand. We have lots of questions, but that meeting is not held. We've reached out.
Yeah.
We can't get a concrete date. We're going to keep pressing for that meeting. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Can we just, 9,500 good for now? Everybody good with that? Kate?
Okay,
Carry on.
so moving on to the hockey accommodation facility. So this is the net cost. Once again, it's funded from the rest of the COVID revenue, hockey accommodation facility. So this is just a summary of the 2022 budget versus the 2021 budget and what we've spent or received year to date. So the big item on here is the loan and interest payment. So we pay 80,000 a year plus interest. I mean, good thing interest rates are really low, so it's very cheap money, which is nice. So yeah, we're budgeting just a little bit more of a deficit than last year because we're not collecting as much income. The Eagles have it for $6,700 a month for a limited period. And then I think there's a little buffer in there. I think we made 2,500 this year renting it to CSRD for wildfire protection. So.
Go ahead, Evan.
Just a housekeeping item. Let's take the name off the table. It's no longer a hockey academy. That ship has sailed. It's the Eagle's Nest.
Hey,
Okay.
I just asked before, sorry, Jeff. Heat and electricity, that's annual. Is that a little aggressive?
The 5,000.
Sorry, I thought it was 15. I'm sorry, it was 15.
15 was aggressive in 2021, 100%. That's why I've decreased it to 5.
Oh, sorry, Kate.
Based on our actuals, boys just moved in the fall and we do, the heat is quite,
I guess.
but yes, we have decreased it and it was aggressive.
Go ahead, Jeff.
I, through the chair, I disagree with this idea of changing the name to the Eagles Nest, because then that just means that they're the owner of it, and this is going to be a continuous cost to the community. The reason for it was as a community facility. And so, if we throw the dishwater out on a hockey academy, there may be somebody that comes back to discuss that. It may be used for ball tournaments. It may be used for this. It may be used for that. I'm not in favor of labeling this building that it is a single purpose. That's not what we did it for.
I agree with Jeff. So what about hockey schools, things like that? So I agree with Jeff. I don't think we should change the name. I
The
think
South Shuswap Hockey Academy has sailed.
Yeah.
That ship has sailed. That's what I meant. There'll be no South Shuswap Hockey Academy usage of that facility.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, maybe we should just call it the Six Moose Drop-In Center.
That's not bad.
Question for Kelly, loan and interest payments. So what's the term on this? 5-year, 10-year, what?
Yeah, it's a short-term loan,
5-year?
5-year, and I think the current interest rate is under.
Bringing it down quite nicely on a regular basis with that 83.5. I can see where we're at with this. So I'm good with this.
Jeff?
So I guess my next question would be that, I'm sorry, I'm bad with names. Our new staff person that is in charge of our facilities, Jason. Is this going to fall in your wheelbarrow and will you find some tenants to stick in there so that we don't lose our butts on it?
That is the plan.
Okay, good. Then we're good with this.
I still think we should focus on, we are still a hockey town and focus on, bringing as many hockey events to Sycamoose as possible.
Yeah, I just want to, again, applaud council for this move, to purchase this summer. That facility and what it did for the wildfire, you can't put a price tag on that. And I'm talking about the crew from Vancouver Island. We met them, Terry.
Yeah.
They were here. When they left, there was another group that came. They were there for 2 weeks in the drop-in center, assisting our fire department and BC Wildfire Services. You can't put a price tag on that. There were no hotel rooms left. This is the tourist season, July when it hit, July 20th. Once again, I think council should be commended that without this facility, I don't know if we get that support and where do we house them? I mean, they would have been in a tent in the bush somewhere because that's usually where the BC Wildfire folks put their seconded assistance, but we had a facility available. And for me, that is something you can't put a price tag on. So thank goodness we had it.
So when we have a situation like that and people that are evacuated go into hotels and motels, does the province pay that? So did the province pay for this as well? Okay.
Correct, yeah, we through CSRD, so we build CSRD, they pay us, they get the money back from the province, yeah.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Think you should up the rent.
Yeah, this was in our bylaw, the $250 a night, I believe is what they get charged. Or
That facility.
Which is cheap,
Yeah.
but social play.
Oh, is it? Drop.
Love those. You love them. So is everybody good with this?
We're good. We're fighting fires. It's not about profit. Let's see.
Okay, and this was for information as well. I mean, we have that COVID grant that is when we have when the loans paid off is when the COVID grant money will run out. So then after that, we should actually make a little bit of money off of it, assuming the maintenance isn't horrific. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the health center and the net cost there. So I've got an amount, 168,000 there. That's the net operating costs. I'll go into the detail. Once again, the deficit is covered from the COVID grant, which we'll talk about a little later. So if we go here so this is probably a lot of detail for everybody, but it's just to show you where we're at from where we originally thought to where we are to where we are moving in the future. So high level, we are generating a lot more revenue than we originally anticipated. We're between $60,000 to $70,000 a month is what we're getting. So our revenue is a lot more, but also our expenses, which really primarily relate to wages, because there are two doctors there pretty much all the time, and then a third doctor that comes quite frequently. It's their MOA staff. The phone rings off the hook. It's normally one MOA or 1.1 MOA per doctor. So that's where they're making more money, but there's also more costs, and they get 80% of that. So that's that 80% wages. The rest, we're very mindful. I watch with Karen all the expenses that come out of there, recognizing that this is a new service we're providing the community. The way I look at it, if it costs us 150 or 160 for health services, I mean, we spend more than that on events. We spend that, on recreation, it's just another service that we're providing. And I've got this little disclaimer here that the goal is to work towards a sanctioned community health center, where this then will get some operational funding. And Karen is also aware that we are going to work together to try to make this as cost neutral as we can moving forward.
Okay, thanks, Kelly. Terry?
Yeah, thank you. And to the chair, and in the caption at the bottom of this report, just a point that I went in order to transfer my health records from Salmon Arm to the Sycamoose, and they said, we can't be doing this right now. We have over 120 people on the waiting list. So I can see where the caption at the bottom of this is going to have substantial change. And I think now more so than ever, the importance of building this wellness center at 200 Main.
Malcolm, then Jeff.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm glad that our chief financial officer has that mindset because, yeah, I mean, we spend maybe $1 million on roads a year sort of thing, just to pave Maple, I think it was $1 million from one end to the other. I mean, to maintain, keep healthcare in our community at 160,000 or 170,000 a year. I think we're the envy of a lot of small rural communities in BC that we're actually doing that. We've kept a health clinic in our town. We're lucky. Not lucky. It's 5, 6, 7 years of planning, but we've maintained a health clinic in our town, and for not. And yes, we're subsidizing it, but I think that's very reasonable. And we're lucky that that's been offset by COVID for the next 4 years. And maybe after that, the projections are still a deficit, but
Yeah.
As we move in, there's a lot of variables there that Kelly can't figure out because we're transitioning into a new healthcare center, the Shoe Drop Healing Center. We don't know what those costs are going to be, but maybe in between we'll generate a revenue stream from Material Health, hopefully. And we have a patient panel we moved from Dr. Beach's of about, I think he had about 1,800. We have a patient panel of 2,400 now. And with the waiting list of roughly 150 people, I didn't really envision that there would be a waiting list. We were trying to convince Dr. Sadalam that, yes, our small little town can support you. Well, it does. And 2 other doctors besides, 2.75, whatever you want to call it. So I think that's a great success story for our community.
Thanks, Malcolm.
It's minimal cost.
Thanks, Malcolm. Go ahead, Jeff.
Just going so when we did this, we talked about that number actually reverting down. So there was no red ink at the bottom of it. And one of the ways that was going to happen was by the billing, and a certain number was supposed to be covered some of those wages that are directly below it, so that the taxpayer wasn't paying the full brunt of that and that 80%. So are you taking the revenue of 730 doing 80%, coming up with that money left over? So
Right.
if that's the case, where is the 200,000 going?
Which 200?
Well, if you've got 732. and
It's
that's
the
how
cover all.
So how are we ever going to get to the point where the doctors are actually, they're the only ones making the money in this deal. Which there's a certain number, but in their contract, there was something about at a certain point. The facility got to cover some of its costs.
That's a very good point. And it's my goal to make sure that in 4 years, there is no red there. This budget is prepared with, there's too many variables moving forward. I don't know what it's going to look like. So I know what this looks like. So this is how I've done the budget. The doctor's agreements are until we move to the new healing center, and then the percentage allocation will be changed. We provided an incentive at 80-20, recognizing we were new to the health center community, and we wanted to attract the doctors to actually work here. They're all aware. It's very clearly laid out in their contracts that when we move, that distribution will be different. It is industry standard to do 70-30, and that additional 10% makes a big difference on overhead when you're making $1 million, right? So it does help cover those costs more. Yes.
So
Go ahead.
I just bring up that point because the way it looks, it's an ongoing thing forever. And I wanted to make sure that the public might be listening to this, that it's not an odd, we didn't sign up for this to be an indefinite, what Seven's favorite saying? Benefit, or what do you call it? Social play.
Yeah.
It is a social play, but I was thinking that this was being run more as a business for the EDC. And the EDC should be actually benefiting from it at some point. We hope that was the objective, not to subsidize it with tax dollars.
Back to it, it's the healthcare for our community. So even if we do it's not, it's.
Yeah,
It's not a
the chair, I recognize Councillor Molmus's concerns for sure, but I take a look at this budget, and at the bottom of it, in the very last the last context of this particular statement, as more information is obtained, the 5-year budget will be modified, and I'm sure that Kelly will be working towards that goal, and I hope we get to where we need to go with this. But the interim, the importance of healthcare and sick abuse and how we went about it, I think, like, I have to agree with Councillor McCabe, and I'm sure that councillors would all agree to this. Has been a real success story because we put ourselves out there and we've accomplished a lot. But I think that as we move forward, I think we have to leave it up to our finance department to figure it out, and I'm sure they will.
Go ahead, Evan.
Yeah, just again, short term, it's an investment. The investment of 168,000 maintains your rural healthcare. And I think council should be proud of that. The billing has increased because of the work of Karen and Kelly. Trust me, Kelly watches this very carefully. Kelly and I have talked about this. Transitioning to the new facility, and this is for the public, there's a 3-pronged approach to wipe out this deficit. I mean, that's the goal. And the number one would be that we go from an 80-20 to a 70-30 or a 75-25, whatever we negotiate moving forward to split the billing. Number 2 is to achieve a sanctioned CHC where operating dollars flow from IHA to reduce the deficit. And number 3, we're going to attract new tenants in our new building. Okay, allied healthcare professionals, we're going to pay a lease, and that will also assist. So that's our goal long-term. But when I look at these numbers, what impresses me is the growth on the revenue side. We already knew what the expenditures would be, but we are shocked to learn not only is the revenues on the MSP billings increased, but the waiting list, and that as you grow capacity and you bring in good doctors, word gets out, and as you transition to a new facility, you're going to have a lot more patient panel and hopefully new physicians. So that's the goal, those 3, to bring that, to Councillor Molmus's question, to bring that 168 to 0.
I agree. I'm not surprised, but if we had this conversation, that they're going to start coming back to Sycamoose once we have more docs in the area. Yep, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, sorry, through the chair. Thanks, Evan. We lack in getting the word out about exactly what the thing is, and that's what kills us on Facebook. So we need to be very clear in exactly what our strategic plan is moving forward. And we need to make sure that the public understands it, because you want to listen to it, there's a recording, just say to the naysayers on rant and rave, well, that's not what our plan was. Like, here it is, it's laid out. And so that's why I'm getting more adamant about making sure that we lay out exactly what our plan is, so that the public understands it, so that they don't get a chance to go to rant, rave, or whatever, sickamoose rave, whatever place they're on social media and tear us a new, what, so.
I think that Sarah's been doing a great job with that and keeping everything current right now as it comes out of here. She's been posting it. So good job, Sarah. But is everybody good with this?
Yeah.
Okay, let's carry on.
Okay. And just so everybody knows, this is a pretty conservative budget. I actually think our revenue will be more than this, but it's funded from grants, so it doesn't affect taxes. So I think we can do better, but we'll see. On that note, similar but different, I have some money and I want to keep it kind of separate for a website for the health center. Not a big fancy one, $6,000 to keep it separate from the district of Sicamous. As we move forward and it becomes a sanctioned community health center, it has to be through a not-for-profit. So even though right now it's part of the district, I'm trying to keep a line so it also is a little bit separate as well. So as we move down these paths, it's easier to break off and transition. I don't know how council feels about having it kind of more separate versus embedded within our website.
I think that, I think a separate website's perfect because you're going to have tenants in there as well. So people are going to go to the Sicamous, or Shuswap Health Healing Center and know exactly what hours they're open, who's in there. So, and even maybe booking online eventually. I think it's a good idea, Kelly. Go ahead.
Through the chair, yeah, I think a separate one, but I think that we need to create links. So like from the district website, because, even when I go on the district website, it's difficult. Yeah. To navigate our own website is a nightmare. Like, I got people that call me about they want to see our last council meeting. I just go, it's on the website. Well, they can't find it. I don't even know if it got put up or not. So there's some things that need to be easily accessible. And it's been a complaint of mine since the day we built this thing, that it's still not.
Okay, go ahead, Jen.
Council Melms, I'd be happy to help anybody if they're struggling with finding anything on the website. Please direct them to me. And we have made some revisions and we've been trying to make it more user-friendly, but that of course also creates confusion when we've moved something. So if there's anybody struggling, please send them my way.
Okay.
Perfect, thank you. Go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, through the chair, I think a separate website would be great. And as we develop the healing center, we can have updated info and photos as it gets constructed and all that stuff.
Yeah, good idea. Terry, did you want to say something?
No, I'm good. Yeah.
Hey, are we all good with this? $6,000 to a website?
Yeah, because perfect. It's embedded here. Okay, good.
So.
Oh, sorry. Hold the bus. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, I'd like to make a comment about the councilor's request, which is the next section.
All right.
And I'd like to make it up front before we even start on it.
Sorry, what's in it? Where are we at?
I've just got council requests. So there's one about conversion of LED lights and one for fiber optics feasibility and planning.
Okay, go ahead, Jeff.
So I would strongly suggest that the fiber optic one be removed because that's private. It's a company that's coming in to do it, and the district should not get involved in doing anything with fiber optics at this point, because it's going to cause some issues. So I think that it should be entirely removed. Now, I know the mayor requested it, so it would be his choice to remove it. But I know from conversations I've had, we as the district of Sicamous do not want to discuss this.
I can also, I know,
Okay.
I've got Carly on the line and I know the DevCorp has been working and she's actually, I think, working on a grant towards this as well. That's why Carly, can you comment on this? If you're listening. Oh, she might not be listening right now, but I know that the Dev Corp is working on it and she's working on a grant specifically for this. So I've just said, instead of putting money here, she's got money within her economic development budget to work on this.
Okay, well, let's maybe just table that for now and we can,
Yeah, I was specifically asked by a guy who's tried to bring it in here that we do not deal with it at all.
well, sorry. Okay, we can't base our decisions on it was said by a guy, so let's just table it for now and then we can figure it out later.
So I'm not so sure that I agree with Counselor Malmus on this, but I tell you what, there is a lot of moving parts when it comes to high-speed internet, broadband and fiber optics, and there's all kinds of options that are coming out now as to what we could do when it comes to having broadband and fiber optics or high-speed internet for the importance of the community in the long run. And I think what we're trying to do is we're trying to formulate maybe another industry within the district of Sycamoose. And I think it's essential that we end up with some sort of plan in place in order to get this accomplished. So whether you want to put $30,000 in the budget for now and maybe $30,000 in it next year, because there's Elon Musk is building a new concept, and there's fiber optics is now almost becoming redundant, honestly, because there's Wi-Fi that's coming our way that's a whole different concept. So maybe because of how Councillor Malmus looks at this thing, based on the options that are coming up, it's probably maybe premature. So just saying, but I think it's really important that we take a look at high-speed internet for this community, because there's a lot of money out there based on what the feds are trying to do when it comes to getting high-speed internet to every jurisdiction in Canada right now. And I think we should entertain maybe looking at grant funding that might be able to assist us somewhere in the future.
Thanks.
Say it.
Kelly, do you have Carly on the line yet?
Carly, she's there, but she could,
Okay, go ahead.
might not be really active.
So through the chair, like I said, that reason, I don't care. We could talk about high-speed internet, but I don't want it to specifically signal fiber optic, because like you just said, there's more options than fiber optic. So if you're going to label it that you want high-speed visibility, not fiber optic specifically.
Yeah, it should be in the wording in that particular. Yeah, I agree with you on that, Councillor Malmus. Because there was lots of different options that are coming down the table, and I'm not so sure fiber optics is the answer.
Just high-speed internet.
A high-speed internet.
Or change that to high-speed internet. Does everybody agree? And this leave the money in there because we do need money for it at some point.
So it's actually already within the Dev Corp budget.
Okay.
So in the DOSTC, and it's one of the only strategic priorities that the actual Dev Corp themselves added. And I know they're actively working on it. So versus us picking up that ball, I say, let's leave that ball with them. Carly's got a lot of good information on what she's been working on. So I'm happy, it's already in the Dev Corp budget.
Okay, take it out of ours.
So yes, exactly.
Good.
And we do have fiber optics here.
Oh.
And we just don't have them connected. Anyway, Kate, we're all good with that?
Okay, and this was, came from Councillor Anderson, but through Daryl to me about the conversion of LED light standards. And so we've got some numbers here about converting. Apparently we have 259 light standards. To convert to an LED is $500 per light. So it's, what was the number? 129,500 if we were to do them all right now, and we save 5 cents per day per light, which works out to $4,700 a year. So what Daryl recommended was to complete in conjunction with PC Hydro. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all.
Go ahead, Daryl.
We could take any or all of this project and either, go for it and get them all done, or break it up into manageable parts, and staff could look at areas that make sense maybe break it into areas. The LED conversion through BC Hydro is coming. It's being done in other communities. Now, as lights go out, they're replacing them with LED. And I knew this was coming. They had communicated with us a couple of years ago. We got on a list so that we could get a little more proactive. And instead of having a bunch of LEDs start to pop up, they could come in and do it all of our stuff at once, all of their stuff at once. I don't know when that'll be. We are on their list to get a conversion, and it'll happen quite quickly once they come into town and do it. So I'm comfortable if we want to start moving that way with our lights. I don't think we'd be far behind. We might be a little ahead of them at one point, and then they're going to come in and do it, and we'll catch up. So long story short, it's a pretty big number. The 5-cent savings between the sodium, high pressured sodium versus the LED, that's the low end. It does depend on wattage. Sometimes that gap was as high as 11 cents per day per light for savings. The numbers aren't exact, but over time, obviously, we are going that way, and there will be a savings. So whatever you want to do.
It's up to council. Do we want to just go piece by piece? Go ahead, Jeff.
Where are you getting the money from, Kelly?
Well,
Propose to get the money.
yeah, that's a good question. I guess it depends on how much we plan on doing. If it's all the light standards, then that will be a financial issue, and I don't know where I would get that money from. Because it's kind of an operational thing. It's not really a capital thing because it's a converting a light bulb. So it probably financially, if we're going to do it, it would make more sense to do it over like a 3 or a 4 year period kind of deal.
Go ahead.
So Daryl, before the start of this meeting, asked that Gord and I meet with him to discuss the infrastructure planning part of our zoning for roads and that, and part of it is going to be to do with the lights. So asked that Gord and I attend a meeting on Friday at 11 o'clock. And he just sent us the information. I think that Gord and I should attend that meeting, and then it's come out of there with a idea, because the discussion was like, we got 6 or 7 different types of lab standards now, and every time we get a new council and a new staff member, we get new lab standards. So I think that we're trying to standardize it by this brown book that we got, and so we should have that meeting before we.
Go ahead, Daryl.
Yeah, through the chair, and I agree with Councillor Malmus that meeting should happen, just so the expectation isn't that the actual lamps or light poles will change. This is a head conversion, so I'm going to ballast.
Yeah.
And a LED component.
And just based on what Kelly has just said, I don't think the money's in there to do everything. So it has to be we're looking at a piece by piece fix. Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair. So Kelly, I would suggest that you come up with a number that's comfortable to you, and then we divide this into that number for the number of years that it would take. Like,
Yeah.
hopefully it's 25,000 or 30,000. So it's a 3 to 5 year program.
Yep, 5 years is 25,000 approximately. So I've got to revisit in final budget and phase over several years. So we'll see how the numbers shake out, and we'll put some money in the street lighting.
Maybe phase it in on the savings, right?
Exactly, and then we'll
Yeah.
throw some savings.
Yeah, exactly.
For utilities, because we spend about $90,000 a year in utilities for street lighting. Okay, so we're just scooching to the sewer fund, 2 small items here, and then we are done. So new, not so necessarily exciting, but it's for some trucked waste. So after talking to Daryl, he wants to clean GO2 1 in 2022 and GO2 2 in 2023, and that'll cost us about $50,000 each year. We have a sewer operating reserve for these one-time costs, so that money would come right out of there.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Through the chair, Daryl, those geotubes, like, I know the first time that we gathered them up, it was not good shit. It was not allowed to be dumped anywhere. Now, since we've put in the filtration of that, are these tubes basically got filtered? Jet?
You mean we don't have?
Through the chair, it's, they're much the same. It's the same. When we originally did Lagoon 1, we couldn't take it anywhere in its state because it was full of moisture. It had to dry out. That's where we are now with Lagoon 2 and 3 that we've cleaned. They're in the tubes. One of the tubes has been cut open and left to dry, and a lot of it's been hauled out of there. So the money, this line item would mean we would take that to a class 1 dump facility. So we would get rid of it at the dump. And the next year we would do the same with the other geotube that's still sitting there.
So through the chair, that wasn't actually the question.
Sorry.
We first did those geotubes because we had no previous or prior filtration system. What was in those tubes was considered contaminated. When places like Kamloops and that get rid of their sludge, they basically are allowed to use it for fertilizer on land. And so my question is that sludge that we have been filtered, and can it be used on land as fertilizer? Or is it still contaminated with, let's just go feminine hygiene products and a bunch of others?
Just go.
And that's the question is it remnants of the original stuff and we can't use it as because there was no cost to get rid of that stuff. This has got a cost to it. So putting that whole filtration, that pre-filtration system in there, the idea of that was we're still gonna have to take sludge out, but it was a sludge that wouldn't cost us to get rid of. So that's my question.
Through the chair, I think I got it. The screening room's been put in place. The Lagoon 1, when we cleaned it and did the screening room, I would expect whatever's being generated, the sludge in Lagoon 1 will be free of all that stuff. 2 and 3 hadn't been done at that time. So yeah, I'd say all bets are off, but you got 20 years of accumulated sludge that's contaminated.
That was my question. So there's no market for it. It's going to be a cost.
Correct.
But then what you're saying is moving forward when we clean those out, it won't be so expensive,
It shouldn't cost anything.
right?
You'll be able to use it as a fertilizer. That's what they do in Kamloops. They got theirs with pipes on it that go across to different fields and it's being sprayed. Same as Vernon up on the hill. They're spraying it up there onto the fields as fertilizer. So there's no cost for disposal.
Removal.
But we couldn't get rid of it because of the 20 years of products that couldn't be there. If it was just waste and toilet paper, then it would be usable. So.
Perfect. Makes sense. Sorry, this was my good news piece that I thought of before was this was, I saw MFA, I know. It's actually a 10-year renewal on our large sewer loan. It's just around $3 million because the interest rates have gone down so much from 10 years that we save $74,000 a year in our principal and interest payments, which goes on everybody's taxes who's in the sewer specified area. So that's a savings of 1.64% on, it's not on your municipal tax. It is, and not everybody has that tax on there, but a lot of people do. So they will see a reduction in that. So that was my. Good job. Okay, I have no control over, but it works. That's why boring with MFA is good. Okay, so that's it for all the little operational items. Do we want to, there's a few other little things on the agenda. Do we want to take a break or do we want to talk about them?
We have in camera to go into yet as well. So what few little things do we have and what do you think?
Okay,
And
this very quick.
then let's go very quick.
Okay.
Take a break before we go in. camera.
Okay, so this is just a summary of where I'm anticipating the COVID grant. So this was a little present, well, it wasn't a present, but just some additional funds given to local governments to help them with operational expenses. And there's no deadline on when we can spend it, but we have to report on it annually. We got $927,000. And so this is how I'm proposing that we spend it. It's to offset costs for the hockey academy, the daycare, the community health center, and any additional IT services. So year one, this up here was the budget. This is the actual here. So we're at about 200,000 that I'm applying. And then in future budget years, we've got the hockey academy, some daycare costs. This is this year, and the health center. So 228. And then in 2023, no more daycare costs in here, as the agreement, our current agreement says we're not gonna pay for the utilities and those other things that we're currently paying for. So I budgeted accordingly. We'll see how it actually occurs. But the hockey academy and the health center, so 211,000 in 2023, 2024, it's very similar. 2025, it's just the health center and the hockey academy, at which point there's no more debt payments for the hockey academy. And the goal is to make this more sustainable. So as it stands, there's just over $1 million. So we got 927. So in 2025, I can't use 128 of that. So I only use 72,000 in 2025 to offset these costs here. But when I look at the 5-year plan, because I have it all done, the numbers are still looking fine to me. This isn't this, I was worried until I pulled all the numbers together, and I'm feeling okay about it as it stands. So that's just a summary of where I'm planning to allocate that COVID money.
Okay, everybody okay? Any questions? Okay, let's carry on.
And this is just for information, it's how much we're paying to the library, which also goes on your taxes. It's an increase from 133,000 to 100.
$1,800.
Yeah,
So that's the change in the library tax requisition.
everybody okay with that?
And then last, I just have the listing of the District of Sycamore strategic priorities, and I got a little check mark if funds have been included in the preliminary operational budget. This is just for information. It doesn't mean, and actually really 16 regional transit service options. Potentially, when you look at our active transportation plan, you could argue that that could somewhat be tied to that. Bike skills and motor park at Owlhead doesn't have anything, but we have that in the capital budget, right? So when you look through, there's a lot of things in our strategic plan that we are allocating operational money to.
Okay, I have a quick question. And that's great, but how do we, as an example, how do I get, I'm the fire protection. I think Gord should be the lead on that because he is the guy that's in touch with everyone. So that shouldn't be my portfolio. How do we do the switch?
You just let us know what you want modified and we can modify.
Thank Gord, the key contact for that. Go ahead, Jeff.
I got lots on that.
To your point 16, the regional transit service options. If it's a regional transit service option, we have a clause in the rail trail that says it's going to be an active rail line at some date in the future. So we should just let the CSRD worry about that.
Oh, geez, Louise. Go ahead, Terry.
In regards to the priorities, and I see all the checks along the boxes here and whatnot, and I think maybe staff should consider that we have another strategic priorities meeting somewhere in the near future, same way I'd say in January. So we go over all of these priorities, both the DOSDC and our own, and add and subtract, and because there's quite a few of these boxes that are checked off. So I think it's necessary that we have another meeting.
I agree.
Yeah, and it concerns me that I used to have a portfolio called the community forest, and I'm still a politician along with the mayor that meets with the other politicians in the other communities. Now with Bill 28, the community forest is in the economic development department under Mr. Parliament and me. I don't know how what's going to be the move forward on this. Like I know I requested from Mr. Parliament the other day to actually prepare a letter to send to Richard Manwaring in the ministry, and based on this Bill 28 get third reading, which means now it's just a formality when it becomes actual. And to get us to the front of the line, I met with Greg McEwen on Sunday and we talked about it. And so I'm not sure where that ended up at. And I'm not sure what the procedure is, because community forest isn't in this portfolio thing anymore.
Evan?
And that's a loaded question. And it's complicated because we have two other partners, but in short, our interview on Friday with the CD folks in Cando and the economic partnership with First Nations, part of the 5 projects we're working to support future grant funding is a COM4. So that will be raised in our interview, that is a partnership that we're working on with the city of Enderby. In terms of Bill 28, as council knows, Bill 28 is basically new legislation where the NDP government has said, if there are small tenures and compensation is awarded to the tenure holders, that allocation would be removed and distributed to First Nations and communities, recognizing local economic development and opportunities. We are going to write a letter. City of Enderby, District of Sycamoose, and Splatseen are going to write a letter on our letterhead to both the minister and Manwaring, advising them that we're very interested in exploring Bill 28. We're also members of the BC Community Forest Association. They are lobbying the government and applauding the government for Bill 28. I have to say that's the most advanced piece of legislation I've seen since I've been in British Columbia that actually is going to actually address this issue, because we know there's no fiber. The allocation is all allocated. But this bill, hopefully, how the NDP gets the money to compensate, that is their problem. But if they do open up that allocation to communities, Bill 28 could be our savior. So that's a long-winded answer, but I think importantly on Friday, when we do get interviewed by CD, I know Chief Christian is going to be bringing it up. I'm going to be bringing it up. Terry will be bringing it up, that this is something we're seriously going to pursue and continue to pursue.
Go ahead, Malcolm.
I think Councillor Moms has got a good point that we should be able to tell the radio stations and social media and anybody that it's a strategic priority. So it should be in the document, should be listed there.
It is listed on the COX ECDF. So it's still one of the strategic.
ECDF, not enough.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still listed.
You can go to social media and let folks know that.
You know, my apologies. I was looking at ours.
And-
ECDF's there.
And back to what the mayor said, maybe we just need to schedule a sit down and review all the strategic priorities on ECDF as well as the DOS. Maybe we could pick a date. Go ahead, Jeff.
Well, the reason that I bring it up is because when they have the academic meetings, the agenda, and you don't get an invite to it, although it is listed as you being on a portfolio. So the ACDEV we created it because we wanted it, and the community forest was supposed to come up with a way of putting funds into it. But we have still a body that is Chief Coopy Christian and George Williams, Greg McEwen, Brad Case, the mayor, and myself that are supposed to be meeting in regards to this, and that was set up some time ago. And as the district of Sycamoose, we chose to put the community forest in the ACDEV. And so who's actually still meeting with those other groups to discuss this? Because now it kind of died on the vine, but now with this bill, it's coming back to the forefront again, and it is political. So I think that I was just asking for clarity how this was going to get moved forward. And if Mr. Parliament thinks that himself and Terry and Chief should be the ones doing it, well, that's up to them. But I think that Enderby is a partner as well. So.
Go ahead, Terry.
Yeah, no, I think the timing is right because of what's just come down from the province when it comes to community forest. There's kind of a new take on it all when it comes to how the province looks at this, and it's kind of was orchestrated at the summit in Glasgow when Trudeau made some comments when it comes to our forestry industry and whatnot. But I think it's opened up some doors for us. If you take a look at the criteria now that the province is looking at, and however we move forward with this, I mean, the conversation. I've never wanted to give up the conversation on the community forest thing. And there was times we had our hands in the air because it seemed to be something that we weren't able to accomplish. But I think now there is an avenue for us based on the mindset. So anyway, however this plays out, I think, Jeff, you have to, take the lead on this as well with Carly, and let's see where it goes. We need to continue with it.
Can I make a suggestion? When we're discussing the hotel portfolio, which is an ECDEV strategic priority, I attend and I'm allowed to contribute if I'm, if I've got something the chair will ask me if there's anything that I have to update. So maybe I suggest that Jeff goes to the ECDEV meetings as well and shares that information with the strategic priority owners in that, the ECDEV. And that way you're in the loop and everyone knows. Go ahead.
But the concern is that the ECDEV wasn't involved before. And so the relationship government to government was formed based on an existing portfolio system. And Mr. Parliament and Tate, and I'm not sure if who was the contributing factor in Splats. And we created a number of letters that we sent. And so this letter that Mr. Parliament I asked the other day to send after talking with Mr. McEwen is basically a past letter, going to edit up a few points and adding Bill 28, changing the date, but it's just to remind them that we're still in the hunt for community forest. So I think it's dangerous territory to pass it off to a different, or like to have the EDC actually. That's not who started this. That's who may manage it, but I don't think that's who started it. And I'm not sure. I'd rely on Mr. Parliament's input for who should be at the forefront of trying to accomplish this. Like we have a partnership that's who was the one that made the inroads. So
Yeah, but it kind of sounds like the charge has changed a bit. Go ahead, Evan.
The steps.
Look, council's driving this. Okay, council's driving the COM4. All the Dev Corp is doing is the potential to look into another revenue stream once the invitation letter is sent out. Once we get approved for a community forest, I think that's where the DOSDC would get involved. But all this work now up to the invitation letter is us. It's basically myself as your director on the Dev Corp, your CAO. Nothing's going to change. Councillor Malmes, the Mayor McEwen, and Chief Christian will continue to work. We'll do this letter. The logo on the letter is not DOSDC. The logo on the letter is the DOS. Okay. So we'll do all the preliminary work. When I say we, the district of Sycamoose. It was transferred to the DOSDC as an opportunity for the new board members to look at a potential revenue stream post approval. But all the work up to will be the district of Sycamoose. Your Dev Corp right now is looking at other things that we haven't even discussed COM4 at the Dev Corp because there was really no action prior to the introduction of Bill 28. We recognized that there was no fiber and we were waiting for government to move and they've now moved. And so we will continue DOSDC to wait until the invitation letter, but up to the invitation letter, that's us, that's council, that's Councillor Malmes. I don't get too caught up on what the DOSDC could or could not do up to that point. They're not really involved, to be honest with you. It's a very complex issue. 3/4 of the board members don't know all the history and the work, and they're focusing on other things. It's more, again, post-approval. Now the Dev Corp's got a potential where we always thought is a great revenue stream to grow this company of ours. Make sense?
Okay. Anything else? Oh, sorry. Go.
Last thing on the very last, can you pull that last screen back up again?
This one or the depth?
That one right there. Connectivity, number 8 initiative, Jeremy Farah. And if there was a liaison to that, I'd like to be added to that particular spot because I'm been really chasing this rainbow when it comes to fiber optics and alternative options when it comes to connectivity.
Yep. Yep, we will add you, Terry. Liaison.
Let's add Terry. Before he changes his mind. Yeah.
Okay, we're good? Yep. Okay, any more comments? Recommendation?
I just got 4 quick shout outs, all positive. Because I don't want to do it in camera, I want to do it publicly. Number 1 shout out to the province. They've kicked in, remember that $35,000 deficit on the bioheat? They've kicked in 28,000.
Oh, awesome.
So they had to go to a special meeting, and this is the Clean BC folks, and we wrote a letter and they recognized because of the federal stacking, blah, blah, blah. So they kicked in 28,000. I know it's a small amount, but more importantly, it demonstrates the commitment to get this facility built. So that's huge news from the province saying, here's 28,000 to assist in that little small deficit for phase 1. The second shout out is to Councillor Malmus for reaching out to TA houseboats. We now have a agreement on the parkland dedication, working with Scott and myself, and that whole issue on the 5% parkland dedication. I want to thank you, Councillor Malmus, for basically brokering that deal and having discussions with the owner. So thank you. You, Councillor Anderson, for the chamber discussion, the lunch, and starting to move forward with that. We're having a meeting next week. We got lots of things to talk about it. And finally, once again, Kelly, your work on this budget and your simplicity and how you explain it and how you dummy it down for all of us to understand it is remarkable. Given the complex projects we've taken on, like the health center and the daycare and working with the DCCs and all the different reserves and the COVID funding, we're very fortunate. We say this every year, but I just feel more confident every time I see the numbers, knowing that our next 5-year financial plan is being looked at carefully, being administered with Kelly and her team who are here today. It's just a confidence that leads us to make decisions because we know exactly where we sit financially. So once again, thank you.
And Evan, thank you as well for everything that you do for the DOS and just even bringing all of this stuff to the table, right? So thank you.
But I think the applause
For the
should
next 6 years.
be federal.
Be able to retire out with us.
Yeah. Either voluntarily or involuntarily. Yes.
Just don't hold your breath.
Okay, it's recommended, can I just go into in camera now and then take a break? Recommend that pursuant to section 91C of the community charter, the select finance committee move in camera. Jeff, Terry, all in favor? Good. Let's